See, she has a shut off right now.
Ms. Rabine, are you feeling ready to go at 6?
Okay, shut off my.
I think I am, but I don't think Stacy Anderson is here yet.
He's not, and it's not 6 yet. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to jump the gun on you.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm ready. We're live on YouTube. MCAT's got a connection, and I think eScribe is broadcasting, so I think I'm ready to go.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock, and I will call this special meeting of the Missoula City Council of August 31st, 2020 to order. If I could ask council members to please turn on their video. And we will call the roll. And in this case, it appears that all council members are present this evening, except for Ms. Anderson. And because this is a special council meeting, we don't have minutes to consider. I will take general public comment, but that is general public.
Hey, John, we can't start our video. That's why we're leaving you as the only person.
It says the host has stopped it. So a host needs to allow us to turn it on.
Ms. Rabine? There you all are. Thank you.
Yay.
So general public comment this evening will be welcome. We will be taking comment on agenda items as they appear, including budget. I see no hands up for general public comment this evening. Oh, I do see one hand up now. General public comment. And this is Kenneth Grindy.
That's correct, yes.
Go ahead.
Thanks so much. Just wanted to submit a final comment for the budget season. And first of all, say thank you to everyone on the council who's gone through a pretty, I imagine, pretty tumultuous budget season and been considering a lot of different points of view and a lot of emails and comments.
Mr. Grindy, we'll actually be taking budget comment later in the evening. This is for general non-agenda comment.
Okay, thank you. I can make a comment later on then.
Thank you. And other general comment, I have Evelyn Wall.
Good evening, Council. I hope you all are well. My name is Evelyn Wall. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I just wanted to thank you all for focusing today on collaboration and working hard to do what's right by our community. I know that the decisions that we ask you to make on behalf of our citizens are difficult decisions often, and I appreciate your careful consideration of all the advocates here. I hope we all can continue to keep an open mind and be sure to listen to the voices most affected by the policies that we enact, as I have seen you do in the past, and I will know you to do in the future. Thank you so much.
Seeing no other attendees with hands raised for general public comment, we will move on to a couple of items of new business this evening. And the first happens in our Land Use and Planning Committee. And Mr. Hess, I would ask for a motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Pardon me just a moment. I'm waiting on it to load. So the first is a motion to rezone property located at 601 West Broadway. And I move that we set a public hearing on September 14th, 2020, and preliminarily adopt an ordinance rezoning the subject property located at 601 West Broadway and legally described as lots A, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the east half of lot 6 in block 51 and lots 48 and 49 in block 56 of the W.J. McCormick edition in section 21, township 13 north, range 19 west, from special district SD Riverfront Triangle, subdistrict D, to CBD 4 Central Business District, DE-D, Outer Core Design Excellence Downtown Overlay. Subject to the applicant and city executing a development agreement and public non-motorized access easement filed with the county clerk and recorder prior to the effective date of the ordinance, which is 120 days from city council adoption or from city council approval. The development agreement and easement documents shall be reviewed by City Parks, Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and Development Services and approved by the City Council. The development agreement shall include construction of the Riverfront Trail along the north shore of the Clark Fork River from east to west, connecting West Broadway on the west end and to the Riverfront Trail on property adjacent to the east without interruption or detour. The developer's responsibility for the cost of a minimum 10-foot wide trail with 1-foot shoulders on either side of the path. The City of Missoula's responsibility for the cost of upsizing the trail to a 14-foot wide concrete trail. The City of Missoula's responsibility for repair, maintenance, and replacement of the trail once constructed, and a 20-foot wide public non-motorized access easement filed with the development agreement. Design of the Riverfront Trail and any variation from the standards, including easement width, surface width of the trail, lighting, provision for trash receptacles and benches shall be specific to the site and approved by City Parks and Recreation. And refer this item to the Land Use and Planning Committee for presentation on September 9th, 2020. And can I make a brief remark?
Mr. Hess.
And as mentioned in the motion, this is before the council for a pre-public hearing, or before the Land Use and Planning Committee rather, for a pre-public hearing on September 9th. And so this is not a substantive action tonight, and there will be opportunity to comment at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. So we are setting a public hearing. Any attendees care to comment on the motion to set a public hearing? I have Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I'll just keep it brief. Did I miss the public commentary, the general commentary?
You did.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sorry. On this thing, I think we need to reevaluate the canyonization of the riverside. I'm happy to see it being done on this side of the river first, as opposed to my ward. But and I think the rest of the public is kind of on board with that too. So I think we just need to be careful about how we do this. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm sorry I missed my opportunity to speak before, but you know, I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Seeing no additional comment, we will have a roll call vote on setting the public hearing. That's right, by. I'm sorry, any discussion from council? Sorry, I got ahead of myself. All right, seeing no hands up there on the motion to set a public hearing. While Ms. Rabine's getting ready, I will note that Ms. Anderson is here for the record.
Thanks. I have to remember to unmute in two places. So Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos, John, you might be muted.
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Would anybody like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes.
Thank you. And the public hearing is set for September 14th. Our second item of new business this evening is the grant award contracts for the mobile crisis team. And AC Davis, you have a report for us this evening.
I do, Mayor, thank you. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to let council know that we were successful in being awarded the RFP from Missoula County to provide a mobile crisis response team for Missoula and the surrounding area. I was hoping to fast track and have a rough draft at least, or a draft contract available for tonight, but that did not happen under the timeline. It's understandable. So I did change my referral as just basically a general update to let everyone know that we were awarded that opportunity and that I wanted to get council's blessing and the city's basically the city's blessing to move forward with that process with the intent to enter into an agreement with the county and also with Partnership Health Center as a subcontractor to provide mobile response for Missoula.
Thank you, AC Davis. And I'm not sure whose committee this lives in. Is it Public Safety and Health? Ms. Anderson, I would entertain a motion.
I do believe so. All right. Okay, so I move to approve and authorize the fire department to proceed with the steps necessary to fulfill the requirements of a grant awarded to the fire department by Missoula County for the mobile crisis unit, with the understanding that the necessary contracts will be presented to the city council at a later date. And may I speak to the motion? I think this is really exciting. We've been talking a lot in our community about the need for mobile crisis, and the CJCC has made their determination on who the grant awardee will be, and it's the Missoula Fire Department in partnership with Partnership Health. And I'm really excited to see them take this up. I know that Assistant Chief Brad Davis has a lot of passion for this and will work really hard to meet the needs of so many in our community. And I look forward to having AC Davis as well as the folks from Partnership in a public safety and health meeting later this year to update us on the work that they're doing. So thanks much.
Further discussion, Ms. Merritt?
I am very happily supporting this motion, and I want to thank the folks, Assistant Chief Davis and all of his staff who worked on putting the proposal together, as well as the folks at Partnership Health Center. I think our fire department has shown a great amount of flexibility in the new and innovative actions that they take on, and this is just yet another example of that. And so I am really confident that you guys will be able to do a great job with this. And the partnership with Partnership Health Center just it makes it a perfect match in my mind. So thank you all for responding quickly to that RFP, and then being ready to present here to us tonight when you just found out about it on Friday afternoon. So thank you guys very much.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. First off, congratulations, Assistant Chief Davis and folks at Partnership. As my colleagues have said, this is great news. I'm completely in support of this. I was wondering if it would be appropriate if Assistant Chief Davis could describe the resources in the teams that will function briefly during the first 4 months of the program and then the final 6 months. And I asked that because there's obviously an intersection here with some work that has been going on with a new request that's in the budget portion. But I was curious if it might help inform that discussion later if we hear what the sort of baseline response was to set the stage for the discussion around the budget.
And we had actually intended to talk about that during that budget conversation, Councilman, if that's okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
Ms. Hart.
I will join my colleagues in congratulating the Fire Department and the Partnership Health Center. This is epic work that you have out in front of you, Brad. I'm so glad that you were able to be successful in this bid. Our community really depends upon you to help change this narrative that we've been facing. And as a member of the Mental and Behavioral Health Task Force at the county, I could not be more grateful to have you leading the charge. Thank you.
Ms. Cheryl.
Yeah, I want to echo my colleagues. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited that both the fire department and Partnership Health have this. We obviously had not obviously, but we had a pretty lengthy discussion about the mobile crisis unit and this proposal on Wednesday. So I will look forward to hearing more in the budget discussion. You know, one of the things that came up on Wednesday that I have been thinking about a lot is the fact that Eugene, Oregon had a similar model. And so I think the number, and I may not be quoting this exactly correctly, but was that about a 20%, maybe even more than that, of the 911 calls were going to this similar type of unit there. So I do have some more questions, but Mayor, if you'd like me to save those until we get to the budget discussion, I'd be happy with that.
Let's do that. Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Seeing no additional questions or comments from council members and seeing no hands raised among attendees, Ms. Rabine will take a roll call vote.
Okay, on the motion to authorize the fire department to proceed, hang on just a second here. Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Absolutely yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
Von Mossberg.
Yes.
West
Yes.
and Anderson.
Yes.
That is 12 ayes.
Thank you, and that motion is approved. We will move on to our fourth agenda item, and this is the conclusion of the public hearing and motions and adoption of our fiscal year 2021 budget. So what you have before you this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is the fiscal year 21 operating budget, along with all of its component parts for your consideration as amended by council through its deliberative process. I continue to think that this budget reflects community values in investment in human beings, some of the most vulnerable in our community, as well as the community's interest in maintaining public safety through many of our departments, including the Missoula Police Department. We have a couple of updates for you this evening, including one with regard to that mobile crisis unit and some adjustments that we've made to that budget and that new request that will allow us to have 2 teams on the road and also provide the vehicles for those teams. And you'll hear more about that from AC Davis, and then any other moving parts that have been adjusted since last you met in Committee of the Whole. With that, I'm happy to turn this over to Lee Griffin, who can fill you in on any of those details. And we'll also hear again from AC Davis.
Hi, I'm going to share my screen and do the budget wrap-up presentation that we ran out of time for in our last Budget Committee of the Whole meeting. We did go through some of this. Just want to walk through the budget process again and how this happens. There have been some questions around what is in the budget, what is council deliberating on, and so forth. So in the administrative budget, the mayor's budget is presented to city council. We brought documents that had the baseline changes, and these were whatever sort of changes had happened to the baseline of all departments. They tended to be items that city council had already approved, such as contracts that extended more than one fiscal year, or changes in, let's say, the FTE, or there was a promotion that happened in a department throughout the year. So that's a pretty static budget with some of those very usual changes that happen in it. And the bigger piece of the budget tends to be the new requests. This is where folks are bringing in not only their baseline increase requests, and so that includes some of those changes that you see there in the baseline. We started having departments bring that in so that it was very transparent and city council was able to see what were the changes that were happening within a department and within a budget every year. And then we also have, of course, our much larger new requests that any department might need to do their jobs. And then we also brought in the capital improvement plan, which are those larger, 2 to 5 year or more programs and plans that tend to be very large dollar amounts and get funded through a very large variety of funding sources. So I just wanted to remind everybody of those 3 core pieces of the budget. And that's why those are the 3 areas that we really focus on when departments come and present to city council. We have an overview of budgeted resources, and I wanted to let folks know that all of this has actually been updated on the website. I did not update my presentation, so if you want to look at that overview of budgeted resources, please go to our website. This lists every single fund, what their projected beginning fund balance, working capital, or cash is on July 1st, 2020, and then the revenues and expenses and projected ending fund balance for the year. We also separate tax and assessment revenue from non-tax revenue so that folks can see what taxes are supporting versus what other types of revenue are supporting. So one thing you'll note is at the end of the evening, when City Council approves the budget appropriations, they're going to be approving this number, the total budgeted expenditures. We have fee resolutions. We went over these last Wednesday, increasing fees in development services, police department special events, wastewater, fire department, and cemetery. And then from last week, this would have been next steps, including tonight's final public hearing on the budget. And then on Wednesday, we are also having another public hearing to pass the assessment resolutions that have to, based on state law and timing, have to happen a couple of days later. So what are the resolutions that will be adopted? There will be the appropriations resolution that also approves the work plans and budgets for the special districts and component units, and the permissive medical tax levy, the fee increase resolutions, and the assessments for the Tourism Business Improvement District, the Business Improvement District, and Road Park District next Tuesday. I did want to bring people's attention to, excuse me, the budget website, because there had been a question. Excuse me, shifting tabs. There we go. Asking about a line item budget. We pulled it together over this weekend and did put a draft line item budget on the website. This is 141 pages. It lists the budget for each fund and each department. And at the top of each of those budgets, there will be an activity. So that gives you more insight into what respective departments are doing. Also, for a lot of those budgets that we didn't get into the detail on, like the debt service funds and so forth, there's all of that detail within there. And that all ties up to the overview of budgeted resources with each one of those funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Mr. Bickle, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't at this time. Thanks, Mayor.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Davis, would you mind talking to us a little bit about the amended new request and what that will accomplish with regard to mobile crisis?
Absolutely, Mayor. And just so everybody knows, Dr. Quirk is also online from Partnership Health Center. So if we have any questions for Partnership or if we need to refer to him, he is available as well. But just real quick, I'll talk about that new proposal and what that does for us. In our original proposal, in response to the county RFP, I had laid out a 10-month plan, essentially, which started out with one mobile crisis vehicle and staffing one mobile crisis team initially, and then 4 months later, staffing an additional mobile crisis team and running those on opposite days, getting 7 days a week of coverage, sharing one vehicle. It has been, after the award of the RFP, the county and also city council brought to our attention that they would prefer to have 2 mobile crisis units running during this pilot program, this grant program. So therefore, my new proposal is for an additional vehicle and to provide 2 mobile crisis teams simultaneously from the beginning to the end of this project, pilot program. And then also, as we take a step back and look at Missoula Fire Department in cooperation with Partnership Health Center, creating a mobile crisis response team and basically mental and behavioral health division for the city of Missoula and the surrounding area. Missoula Fire Department wants to start with the correct foundation. Therefore, I'm asking for a program manager to come into this process. And as the grant program unwinds and we have 2 crisis teams out responding in the streets, and as fire brings on a CIT program manager, I feel it's critical that the fire department has the capacity to oversee all things mental and behavioral health and CIT. Therefore, I am asking for a program manager to make this basically an entire mental and behavioral health unit under the fire department in cooperation with Partnership Health Center. And so the proposal that I have in front of you today will afford us the ability to do that, to have 2 teams running simultaneously. And it is our goal to get those 2 teams up and running as soon as practical. Obviously taking into consideration the hiring of new personnel, training of new personnel, purchase of the vehicles, and then getting them out on the street and responding to dispatches as they come through the 911 center or through the phone. So I guess that is my proposal. I would absolutely entertain any further questions on that proposal. And like I mentioned earlier, if we need Dr. Corp from PHC, he is also available. And I'll just leave it at that.
Great, thank you, AC Davis. So in order to make this work, as I see hands popping up, I'm going to do 2 things. One is in accordance with our rules and process, I'm going to close the public hearing on the budget. Folks in the audience, don't worry, we will take comment. We're just closing the official public hearing before we entertain motions, and then we will have discussion and I'll invite comment on those motions. And I think for purposes of the meat of the discussion this evening, I would suggest that we begin with the second to the last, the penultimate motion here, which is the resolution fixing the appropriations in the CIP. So that is basically the budget. And then I think we can move into the additional motions with regard to those administrative fee increases. So with that, Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. So I'm going to make the motion, the second to last one, if I followed your process. So I move council adopt a resolution fixing the annual appropriations and the capital improvement program for the city of Missoula as set forth in the fiscal year 2021 budget and capital improvement program, including the Tourism Business Improvement District Work Plan and Budget for fiscal year 2021, Business Improvement District, the Tourism Business Improvement District Work Plan and Budget for fiscal year 2021, the Business Improvement District Work Plan and Budget for fiscal year 2021, the Park District Number 1 Work Plan and Budget for fiscal year 2021, the Road District Number 1 Work Plan and Budget for fiscal year 2021, as amended by the Budget Committee of the Whole during their August 26, 2020 meeting.
And so those amendments include, or that motion includes all of the amendments that council made during the Budget Committee of the Whole meeting, including changes to police budget, et cetera, correct, Mr. Mossberg?
Correct.
Thank you. That motion is in order. And is there discussion on the motion? I see Ms. Hart.
Thank you. I had some questions for AC Davis, in particular to the slightly expanded mobile crisis unit budget that you proposed. Could you, for the sake of our benefit as a whole, just discuss about what your original proposal was, Brad, and where it stands today? What's the difference in terms of costs and in terms of people?
AC Davis.
Absolutely. Thank you. So essentially, the main difference between, I'll try to, this has been moving pretty fast. So our original proposal was for the rollout of one mobile crisis team initially, and then 4 months later, we were going to add a second mobile crisis team. And so we would have 2 at that time, 4 months into the 10-month pilot program. I would like to, the county, they wanted 2 units right out of the gate. I wrote a proposal a little different than that. And then as we began to revisit that, they still feel pretty strongly of having 2 mobile crisis teams early on and throughout the whole process. And the other difference is I wrote into the grant a program manager as well. And so this proposal, essentially what I'm doing is I reduced, so in negotiations with the county currently as we're drafting our contract, our agreement to provide this service, we have agreed that 2 teams is preferable, and therefore we're asking for additional funding for wages to make that appropriate or to make that feasible. And then I'm also asking through this proposal from the city an additional vehicle to make that feasible. And then what I did not have in my proposal is I think everybody is in agreement, and I have all the confidence that this pilot program is going to provide the data and the results, and everything we say this program is going to do is going to be proven by the end of this 10 months to continue this program on. I think everyone's in agreement that it's a needed service for Missoula. So I'm trying to set up now for months 11 and beyond. And I feel for us to be able to do that, we need the capacity at the fire department. So this proposal would bring on 1 additional personnel to manage all things mobile crisis, CIT, mental and behavioral health, not only for our citizens and helping with that case facilitator, but for our own members and police officers for our own mental health and behavioral health and well-being. So we can build that foundation now with the capacity, with the program manager, with the grant funding, pushing this along for the 10-month program, gathering that data, gathering the results, and then throughout the 10 months, we'll be continually looking for other funding options and funding sources to continue this program on. But I feel that as we roll this out, we want to get everything right. We want to get the foundation laid so we can build on this program and have it for years to come. Hopefully I answered your question and all of that. And if not, let me know if I need to clarify.
I appreciate the re-explanation. Perhaps my question wasn't targeted enough. So if I remember correctly, originally the proposal was for $75,000, and because of adding the program manager, that elevates or raises the budgeted amount to $114,000 and change. Is that correct? Okay, Brad is nodding his head.
That is correct, but it also, the additional above the $75,000, what that gets us is additional wages for the FTE program manager for the fire department, and that also gets us 2 vehicles. So that's the big expense.
Okay.
This could take it down.
Appreciate that. And then, Mr. Mayor, with this revised amount, I assume that we are going to be voting, sorry, I keep losing my spot here. We are going to be voting on this particular motion as a sole item, or is this going to be part of the entire budget?
Part of the entire package.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You bet. On the motion, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to just clarify a couple things because I think that this is important to sort of peel away and denote the various things we have all wrapped up inside of this motion or within this one particular line item. So my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Assistant Chief Davis, is that the proposal that you submitted to the Mobile Crisis Grant had in your proposal 1 unit for 4 months, 2 units for the remainder 6 months to get us for the full 10 months. The 10 months is because this is starting in October and we fund things in calendar years. And so fund things in fiscal years. And so there's 10 months remaining in our fiscal year 2021. Then in conversation with the city and the county and based on the direction that we gave you last week in Budget Committee of the Whole, you are bringing forward an ask for additional resources beyond what the grant provided you to basically fill out that second mobile crisis unit team for the entirety of the program to get them up and going for months 0 through 4, as well as a program manager and the additional equipment and vehicles needed to have 2 teams rolling on the street as soon as possible. This $114,000 request will be added to the $380,000 grant award that you received. Within that grant award is $75,000 that the city had already committed as a part of the grant application to the state that was needed. And so this actually, with 114 and the 75, brings the city's portion of this within this budget to close to $200,000, correct?
Could not have said that better myself, Stacey. You nailed it.
That was, I appreciate that.
You did a much clearer presentation than I did. Thank you.
Happy to help. Absolutely. So, and then I think you hit on a very important point that I want to highlight is that, you are already starting to think about months 11, 12, 13, 14, and, this startup has got grant award from the state and various resources, but we as a community are going to need to look and figure out how to continue to fund this beyond this just original grant award cycle. And that the intention is that really to build this out as a permanent community asset, not just a 10-month pilot program.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Further discussion on the motion, Ms. Sherrill.
Thanks. I think my colleagues asked a couple of my questions, but I'm curious about the data collection piece. I'm excited about having this be 2 units for the full 10 months, partially because I believe our community needs it, and partially because I think that we want better data going forward to have the full 2 units going for that period of time. Could you speak a little bit to maybe some of the data points that you're going to be looking at, just how you're going to use that, what type of data you're collecting? Do you know that at this point?
Yes, we do. That's a great question. We have a pretty good idea. One of the benefits of this being a grant funded project from the DPHHS is in return, the state is actually looking for a pretty comprehensive data report every month from this pilot program. And then also, as we're very early on, and we found out we were awarded this on Friday, so we're very early on in the process, and we're trying our best to move along. But so Partnership Health Center has a vested interest, and they have data that they want to collect that is important to them. The county has data that they would like to collect. The city has data that they would like to collect. And then obviously we have to report per the grant requirements, specific data back to the state. So I don't have that entire package in front of me, but I will tell you that we're going to be tracking things, number of behavioral health calls, the way the calls come in, time of day, the day that the calls come in, who's calling them in, whether it's a family member or it's a clinic or hospital setting or coming in through 911 dispatch. And then we'll be tracking some of our measurables. They're going to be jail diversions, emergency department diversions, how long we're on scene, how many fire department units, how many messy units, how many law enforcement units we can free up and for how long, how much time we're saving them, how much work we're saving them. And then obviously, which is very important to everybody, including the taxpayers, any cost savings that are coming from this program from the time we are freeing up other additional resources. And then also for me, just as we talk about fire department operations and my alternate response unit pilot program that was successful last year that we're continuing to build on, we're also going to be looking at, as we free up ambulance units, messy units, and fire units, our improved response time because of our increased station reliability, because we are not having to spend as much time on a behavioral health call where this unit can come in and take over for us, get us back into station so we can respond to other calls in our jurisdiction to keep our response times where they need to be and our availability up. So I guess without just going through this list by list and telling you everything, I'm more than happy to email you what the state is requiring, and then we can wait until we come back in front of you and tell you our plan, and just basically put in front of you guys what we're going to be collecting for data at that time. But we're going to be looking at it from several different angles. We'll be looking at it from the jail's interest, from the county's interest, from the cities, from partnerships as a clinic, hospitals are interested in this, and how much diversion and how we can reduce their volume of inpatients that they're seeing in the emergency department. And that's going to be all of this program. We'll be tracking all of that. So data collection is going to be a huge portion of this 10-month pilot program.
I love data, so I'm really happy about that. Mayor may have a follow-up question. Yeah, so I will, you don't need to email that to me, but I will be really excited to hear your presentation when it comes to council. I think that that's going to be so crucial in helping us figure out how we need to move forward in this. Could you speak to how, my understanding is the mobile crisis unit will interact with the BID officer, and I'm trying to understand how that will work. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, as we roll this program out, data is a huge portion of that. It's going to be a big lift initially. And then there's a couple other things that are going to happen early on. And one of those is going to be stakeholder meetings. And it's very critical that we get all of the key players involved early, developing these plans for policies and procedures. And so we'll be in contact with 911 dispatch, sheriff's department, police department, MESI, clinics, hospitals, everything. And out of that's going to be basically the relationship is going to be very crucial between fire medical response and law enforcement response. So we're going to be working in conjunction with Sheriff's Office and Missoula PD very closely, and working with those BID officers. And as they are responding to and having basically as the need arises for them to have, as they're interacting with a mental health issue or behavioral issue, a very direct relationship between this program and those BID officers is the ability for them to request the mobile unit to come to their location and interact with these individuals, which also puts the right people on scene, the mental health professionals, and this unit that is designed to actually spend time and help these individuals with whatever their issue may be. And then with the backup that we have built into this proposal with the case facilitators that are working behind the scenes, is to basically surround these individuals with immediate help on the street to free that BID officer up so he doesn't have to spend as much time trying to navigate this complex system, and putting the right people on scene at the right time, and then surround these people with resources and a network to be able to get them the help that they need. So it's a very direct link with our law enforcement and specifically our BID downtown officers. Just as most of us are aware, a high volume of these type of calls will be in that Reserve Street encampment and in the downtown area.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Cheryl and others, I will be interested as data collection commences. I'm going to be very interested in outcomes. I will certainly be grateful if we if we have better response times, et cetera. But I'm very interested that the folks to whom we're responding are getting the kind of help they need. And I would hope that we can demonstrate that this intervention at the right level and at the right time is producing better outcomes for folks in crisis, and that those crises become one-time events in their lives. AC Davis, can you talk to us a little bit about what a response would look like? I make a call when the program is up and running. I make a call to 911. 911 dispatches. Who do I see?
Absolutely. So we'll have to definitely work these out in detail. Initially, this in brief conversations with 911 will work as a co-responder unit probably early on. But essentially how that would work, Mayor, is if you call 911 and it's very specific and very obvious to the dispatcher that it is not a medical emergency and it's not a law enforcement call, they would just dispatch this mobile health crisis unit to respond to that individual to deal with whatever the request is or whatever the needs are. Also, that this mobile crisis team can be dispatched from fire that's on scene, from MESI or medical that's on scene, from law enforcement that's on scene, to have them come help them with whatever situation they may be dealing with. So it'll be multiple different resources to get this unit going. It can be a 911 call and screened through dispatch. It can be a phone call, and it can be at the request of fire, medical, or law enforcement that is on scene with an individual, or on scene of whatever the incident may be that needs additional help, can request this unit.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion, Ms. Jones.
Thanks. I was kind of going to follow up on that thread, actually, Mr. Mayor. And first, I just wanted to say that I'm really happy with all of the different funding sources coming together and the increased capacity that this is looking at being over a $500,000 endeavor to really have significant impact. So yes, I'm looking forward to the data to see what happens. But I kind of wanted to follow up again on the what happens during a response on the ground. And I guess a question, this might be for Dr. Quirk. We've got the Trinity project being built, which will in the long run include a crisis stabilization center, is my understanding. We don't have that yet, though. Although we've been working on Trinity for over a year, we're probably still another year out before we have that as another resource and tool. So when there is a response on the ground and someone is clearly in crisis, what are the options? What do you see unfolding? And in the future, will this crisis stabilization center, will that be helpful? If you could just talk us through a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for time. I will probably defer to AC Davis and perhaps even Sarah Potts, who's our Director of Behavioral Health here at Partnership. I mean, the most likely thing that's going to happen, I think, with this is as we start.
Dr. Quirk, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure. I think others are having difficulty hearing you.
Sorry, is that any better? Can you hear me now?
That's better. Thank you. Sorry.
It's fine. Getting pretty used to that at this point. So I just wanted to thank everybody for the time. And Sarah Potts is on. She's our Director of Behavioral Health. And, I think our initial role will be to identify some of those holes in the system. I think that there's a good chance that we will still be transporting people to the emergency rooms, in part because there might not be other resources available. I do think that, we will be able to get other agencies involved that can help us, find those other locations where people can go with a little bit more of kind of a cohesive response in this setting. Looking at the Cahoots website, I think they do have a crisis intervention center. And I do think that greatly very much plays a role in their success. And perhaps one of the things that will happen in the next 10 months is highlighting, the need and perhaps the desperate need for something like that in our community. With that, I would kind of yield to Sarah Potts briefly in case I've left anything out.
Hi. I wouldn't add too much. I think you did a good job explaining that, Dr. Burke. I do think after talking with a couple of other sites around the US who do have these mobile crisis units, something they all do have are more of these stabilization zones or areas. And so I do look forward to seeing how that kind of community option could be pretty supportive for people who we might be contacting in this mobile crisis unit. Thank you for your time, and we're really excited about this.
Thanks. I really appreciate the response, and I appreciate all of the effort that's gone into creating this. So thank you.
Hey, Gwen. I have great answers by Dr. Potts and Dr. Cork. The only thing I just maybe want to follow up on Mayor Engen's question. I'm not sure if I answered it completely, and just also so everyone knows kind of, I think I've heard a couple times, what does this look like? And I guess just what that looks like is this mobile crisis team, there'll be two of them. So there'll be two vans, like a minivan or maybe like a small SUV. And that team would look like one EMT and one mental health professional. So there'll be two individuals in a nondescript vehicle that would be a mobile crisis response unit. And it's our goal to have two of those with a great network and support behind them from both partnership and Missoula Fire, and then this cohesive network that Dr. Cork spoke of. And that's going to be one of our main goals, is to try to find all of the available resources and working together provide that response. And he hit the nail on the head. I'm hoping that this data, we're going to have some gaps in our system as a community, and that will hopefully be identified through this program. Thank you.
Hey, are you back on?
I am. I apologize. I'm not sure what happened there, but I just went away. But I am back, and I just need to get my participant list back up here. Okay. Continuing on the motion, Ms. Merritt.
Brian, you had your hand up before. Did you want to?
Go ahead. It got lost when I got made the co-host. When the mayor went off, I'll go after you if that's okay with the mayor.
Sure.
Okay, I actually have an amendment that I would like to make. So I'm gonna want it to take us in a different direction. If it's not an appropriate time, let me know.
It's in order.
Okay. It's somewhat connected. I would like to move to amend the budget to remove the additional BID officer that was in the police department's new requests. And specifically, I'd like to see us wait to see how the response with this mobile crisis team plays out and how that operates, to see if we really need that additional BID officer. And I guess just to speak to that briefly, I think we've got a population downtown that's already heavily policed. I know I've heard arguments on both sides for having a second officer, but I'm making this motion because I would like to see us wait and see what changes are brought about by the addition of the mobile crisis team.
All right. Is there further discussion on the motion to amend? Ms. Osika.
Thanks. I have a question. Is the BID officer going to be an additional officer that needs to be sworn in? And will it be able to transfer over to other like patrol duties? Or will it be a current officer that's just going to be assigned specifically to BID duties?
So the grant that we received through the United States Department of Justice, which will fund this position, and for which we applied, will fund two officers. One business improvement district officer to work in tandem with the existing officer in that program, with support from the business improvement district itself. And then the grant also supports the hiring of an additional officer to do forensic investigation, which is another need that we expressed as a function of this COPS grant. So those are the two moving parts there.
Okay, thank you. I am not in support of Ms. Merritt's motion. I believe that both of those those officers are greatly needed to help ensure the safety of our community. Thanks.
Further discussion on the motion to amend, Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is actually in regards to that grant that we proactively applied for. We were awarded 2 officers, one for the BID, one for the forensic. So how does Ms. Merritt's motion affect that grant? Are they 2 separate grants that we were awarded? Are they a grant that's in paying for those 2 positions? How would this amendment, if passed, affect the overall grant itself?
You know, those are details that I'm not aware of because I don't have the grant in front of me. As I reviewed the grant application, however, there were, I believe that the application was for 2 officers collectively. I think we have, frankly, if council isn't interested in funding this position, I believe that we would not receive the grant. So opportunity to fund it later would require an additional grant application, at least for that position. I don't know whether the forensics officer would be removed as a function of not accepting the grant in its entirety. Those are some details that we could certainly get you, but we hadn't anticipated hiring officers with these grants and then having council not approve the grant. Further discussion on the motion to amend. Mr. Von Mossberg.
Thanks. I appreciate Julie's amendment. She and I have spoken about this. I'm not going to support the amendment, and I want to be clear that I have taken great consideration of the input we've received from the public on this. I think that for me, I have probably worked and interacted with the downtown BID officer. I'm guessing it would be fair to say more than perhaps anybody else on council. The current officer is a vital resource that works with the homeless outreach team from the POV, with all sorts of folks that participate in the coordinated entry system for housing. I've seen Officer Kressel at the yearly coordinated entry improvement sort of summit of all the resource providers. And for me, this was always trying to look at other options that weren't an either or situation, either doing the second BID officer or not doing it. And what I've been involved with in discussions and where this intersects the mobile crisis response, so importantly for me, is the both. There's no question from my interactions with constituents in the downtown area that another resource who operates like Randy is a valued resource, and as Assistant Chief Davis spoke to, will be integrated into the efforts with our mobile crisis response unit. And that was the threshold for me in terms of supporting the second BID officer. It needed to be a resource that operates in that fashion, as well as an accompanying investment in the mental health professional resources that we need to see downtown. I've spoken about this with Amy Allison Thompson from the Poverello today. I think this is an approach that will be supported by folks in the BID who are familiar with the way Officer Kressel operates downtown, and providing an additional resource that's integrated both in work with the kind of work Randy does, as well as with the mobile crisis response, as well as all the service providers who operate downtown. I think this is a step in the right direction. And I've heard that from other constituents downtown as well. So respectfully, I won't be supporting the amendment, but I appreciate the opportunity for discussion about it.
Further discussion on the motion to amend, Ms. West.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess I largely agree with what Brian just said. I think he spoke to how this officer is intended to function. very eloquently. I also think that it's important to recognize that this is a position that's tied to a forensics officer, and I think it was made pretty apparent during the presentation by the police department that there currently is a lack of capacity to process forensic evidence. And I think that that really puts our citizens at a disservice if, cases can't proceed because, folks are waiting for evidence to be processed. And I think cutting this one position puts that hiring the additional officer, so the forensic officer, into jeopardy that I'm at this point not willing to support without knowing what the implications are to the overall grant. I think that waiting a whole nother year to apply for another grant really is just a disservice overall. And also that constituents within the area that the second officer would patrol, I think have also voice the need for an additional officer. And I think this officer will operate in a unique and new way, which I think is important for our community. So thanks.
And Ms. Hart on the amendment.
I want to thank Julie. I know you've been really listening to our community, just like the rest of us, and to come forward with such an amendment took a lot of courage, because we know we have a lot of people who are upset about policing across the country, but also what has happened here in Missoula. And with that, I will not be supporting the amendment for many of the same reasons that were brought forward. When I think about Officer Krassel and what he does in the downtown community really is very much a hybrid type of position. And I think when we hired him in that particular role, it unveiled how we can do community policing better. And so I think looking at gift horse in the mouth and not taking grant money that is available for this and the forensic officer positions would be a disservice to our community at this point in time for a host of reasons. I value the humanity that Randy brings to the position. I have seen him take money out of his own wallet and give it to people who are in need. And it's that kind of compassion that needs to be instilled throughout the entire police force. And I hope that with an additional BID officer, that they can work in tandem together and make the downtown safer for everyone and help those who need help.
And Ms. Becerra.
Thank you. I too have had the pleasure of interacting quite a bit with our BID officer, and I have witnessed how effective and compassionate he is at doing his work. And I have also seen him expand his ability to connect members of the community with the right service provider by working with a social worker, social student. So I believe that combination is an effective combination. It's a good partnership for our community. And I think we need to give that a chance and perhaps reevaluate later, see how that is working for our members of the community. So I appreciate Ms. Merritt's amendment, but I will not be supporting it. Thanks.
Further discussion on the motion to amend? All right, seeing none. Any attendees wish to comment on the motion to amend? So I'm complicating your lives a little bit, folks. I'd like to talk about the motion to amend, not the general budget. Would you raise your hands, please? Mr. Grindy on the motion to amend. Mr. Fesperman on the motion to amend?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Fesperman, do you have something on the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
On the budget more broadly, but also specifically this amendment. I'm hoping, I thank you, Julie Merritt, for this amendment. Again, I think it would be better if we could reject both new positions and reject the locker room, and speaking more broadly to the budget and specifically the police budget, reject the locker room and the showers and the bulletproof helmets for every officer, and take that money and use it to fund the mobile crisis movement unit, use it to fund more social services, because as speakers have mentioned, if someone needs help from the mobile crisis unit, where are they supposed to go? That's the least that you all can do. And I'm sad to hear some of you, like Brian von Lossberg, Heidi West, and Heather Harp, reject this proposed amendment. The truth, the bigger picture, is that the police are still at the heart of the racist status quo. And so please don't let your souls be calcified. Make yourself useful and vote with your heart and for the liberation of all people. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the motion to amend, Mr. Larson?
Yes, thanks for letting me speak. Yeah, the motion, I think I'd love to echo again Will Fesper's comments that we just heard. This is a really sad and kind of somber day here. It's really really rainy and overcast, and that's kind of like what our next year is going to look like here, as far as I can tell. You guys aren't allocating even a drop into this bucket that we've so vigorously and so tirelessly asked you to do. You're spending less on it than you spent to sweep the streets downtown. And I think that speaks to your priorities, and it speaks to you as a group, as a whole. You need to divide this question. You need to fund the mental health unit, and you need to reevaluate and get a majority consensus to send this budget, which is extremely flawed and not representative of our community, back to committee. This amendment is just another example of that. It's despicable, but it's sadly to become expected by this council. And so I'll defer and relinquish the rest of my time to the rest of the community, who's equally as disappointed as I am, if not more. And that's all. Thank you.
And I have Evelyn Wall on the motion to amend.
Good evening, Council. I was wondering, John, is this an appropriate time to ask Assistant Chief Brad Davis a question as well? I just had a question about his stakeholder involvement.
You can pose the question, Evelyn, and then I'll ask it on your behalf.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I have two parts. One, so this is, I'm just going to start with my question for Assistant Chief Davis. Thank you very much for doing your crisis response, putting that together. But you mentioned briefly that you're really focusing on getting all the key stakeholders involved in your response, Assistant Chief. And one of the questions I'm curious about is, we know in these situations where we're activating emergency services, oftentimes it is marginalized identities, it's our LGBTQ identities, it's our BIPOC identities, it's our disabled identities, and people with disabilities, I should say, and the list goes on, that are most at risk during these critical crisis intervention moments. That's one of the reasons why I think we're focused on creating this important new step in our community. But I heard when you listed off the stakeholders that you wanted to involve and kind of help build this response, fire, police, EMS, hospitals and clinicians, and those are all, important people to be involved in that decision-making process. But what I wanted to hear was also meeting with BIPOC community advocates, meeting with LGBTQ community advocates, meeting with folks that do advocacy with people for disabilities, to make sure that all of those voices are being heard, because those are the folks that are most at risk in these critical moments, and just making sure that you have input. And so I was wondering if you have a way of kind of consistently helping those people and inviting those people in to be decision makers as you move forward with this really awesome project. I'm not trying to throw rocks here, just trying to say like, hey, let's make sure we have all the voices that we need. I heard a lot of voices of like responders, but not so much voices of, you know, potentially your clients, which seems like an important voice to have there.
Thank you. So we're getting a little far afield of the amendment, and I'm happy to ask that question.
So my one, if I may, on the amendment is just to remind ourselves, like, part of the reason that we're having this conversation, I feel like, is on the heels of seeing the inherent levels of discrimination in our town, and making sure that we actually invest in systems that are known to reduce discrimination, and that the concerns with a lot of our community members are interfaces with the police. So I think that we really should be listening keenly to the advocates that come next, to kind of say, like, what is it that we're looking for in our community, and what do we need from law enforcement officers, or what do we need maybe from other people that aren't law enforcement officers. So thank you for my time. Sorry for maybe going over. I apologize.
Great, thank you. And I have Eleanor Smith. I'm sorry, I have Laurel.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can. Thank you.
Yes, this is Laurel Hush, she, her. Just wanted to thank Councilperson Merritt for bringing this amendment. I know I have commented on these positions before, so I will keep it quick. But just want to say that I don't believe that the BID officer, this position, and the fact that it would specifically be limited to interfacing with the population of people who are surviving in public in the downtown, the riverfront, and the west side areas is conducive to what Missoulians are asking for when it comes to helping people and assisting people who are in crisis and people who are experiencing homelessness. And I think that it would undermine some of the great strides that y'all are making with this budget and other plans that you have to address these issues that are being implemented. And in regard to the forensics position, my understanding of the position, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that it wouldn't be forensics in the sense of, actually, before I go any further, I want to distinguish, I'm speaking personally just in my own time, not wearing the hat that I wear in my job. Sometimes I forget to do that when I comment. But regarding the forensic officer, I don't believe it would be forensics in the sense of in a lab processing DNA evidence, but that it's pretty specifically, as it says, linked to technology, especially cell phones, and that the Celebrate technology program that the officer would be trained in and is mentioned in the request is actually something that the ACLU and other civil rights organizations have opposed in other states. And some states have passed legislation to really provide extra sideboards and oversight in the use of that technology to make sure that people's rights are protected. And so really wanting to distinguish between forensics as in DNA technology, and then in expanding technology, which is popular in a big part of community policing that can often lead to expanded surveillance of folks. And so just really wanting to make sure that it's not, you know, something personal about the current officer, and, you know, making it about, you know, the compassion that he brings, which I think is really important, but just really the facts of what community policing often is in practice, and if this is the direction that we want to be going. So I urge you all to reconsider and to support Councilperson Merritt's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hess. And Eleanor Smith.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can, thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Eleanor Smith and I live on the west side of Missoula, and I'm also the program director for Montana Women Vote, a statewide organization of low-income women and families. And my comments today represent my personal views as well as those of Montana Women Vote, and we would like to Councilmember Merritt's motion. In the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd by police, as well as continued unjust killings across the country, many communities have had to reckon with police brutality and pervasive over-policing, and this is a really important conversation for us to be having. And we thank the City Council and the Mayor for listening to the rich conversation that's been going on in the past few weeks. National research and ACL research here in Montana have shown that Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and Missoulans with disabilities are disproportionately impacted by over-policing. And structural racism is just as prevalent and insidious here in Missoula as it is in other United States cities. And in the past few months, we've seen many comments submitted to the council and mayor calling for change as Missoulians discuss what services are provided by police and how Missoula could be better served by professionals and programs that are specifically designed to address the needs of the community. And it's particularly unacceptable for a single Indigenous or Black Missoulian to be houseless or without health care on stolen land after enduring generations of violence and genocide. And while we continue to spend more money on institutions that perpetuate structural racism, we must take steps to dismantle structural racism and white supremacy in our community. And so we're asking the council and mayor to reject the proposed increase in city budget for police for the upcoming fiscal year, including the additional BID officer, and distribute all or a portion of those funds to urgent housing and community health needs. Thank you so much for your thoughtfulness and consideration in discussing these important issues.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And Andy Housel.
Hi there, Andy Housel, Ward 2. I would like to give my sincerest thank you to Councilperson Julie Merritt for her bravery and willingness to have an imagination about what our community could look like, rather than sticking with the status quo and saying yes when increases in police funding are brought forward in the upcoming budget. She has shown a willingness to really think in a more meaningful way about what it looks like to meet the needs of everyday Missoulians and what's actually helpful. Speaking from experience, I know and I have heard 1,000 times over, this one gentleman in this role does a particularly wonderful job. I've heard parents say that to kids in their school settings, and then kids come to me and their experience is very different. So I would caution council when we are basically making decisions about the future of policing our unhoused neighbors downtown and in the Riverside and West Side neighborhoods. I would caution us as I'm hearing a lot of, this is gonna be great because it's gonna be just like Randy is downtown right now. That's not how it really works in the world. That's not how it works in the world when we tell young children that this gentleman, their neighbor or mom's boyfriend or this teacher or this coach is a really great guy. What we actually need is not one really great guy who just seems to do it outside of the norm of policing. What we need is a professional to be downtown, interfacing with people who are, as Laurel said, surviving in public. Not only with the kind of compassion that Randy seems to bring to his job, but also with the professional skill set. And with one other major difference, that is that person would not be an armed police officer. So Randy and anyone else that you hire to fulfill this position might be sort of extraordinary in all of those ways, outside of the norm. But that person still has a gun and they still don't have the capacity and the professional skills that a social worker and EMT combined would have. This is about thinking outside of the box that you have found yourselves in because you applied for this grant and got it. And now there's an alternative in front of you that would probably will work better. And you're unwilling to think past that. You're unwilling to be creative, to maybe admit it was a mistake, to go with that grant and do the right thing instead. This BID officer should not be funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My sincerest, I'm Josh Decker from Ward 1. My sincerest thank you to Councilmember Merritt for bringing forth this amendment. During the budget process, you have really proven yourself to be a true listener, absorbing the concerns of your constituents and putting forth creative solutions to bring those concerns to a position of reality. With respect to Councilperson Harp's comments on the existing BID officer, I don't really consider it to be a high mark of the success of the BID program that the existing officer had to go into their own wallet to give money out to people that person was interacting with. That is an indication of a clear failure of the social safety net that we have in place in this town, and not an indication of the success of that person and how they do their job. So, you know, while Randy may be the good apple on the police force, the fact that Randy is going into his own wallet is an indication of other failures, not an indication of his success. And I would urge council to join with Councilperson Merritt and support this amendment. We need trained professionals showing up. A lot of the job of this crisis intervention team, at least in the outset until we get the kinks worked out, is going to be responding secondarily after police have responded. So the first thing they're going to be doing is de-escalating the situation that the police have already escalated by showing up as stormtroopers with guns to a mental health crisis. The crisis intervention team's first job on most of these calls will be back away from that threshold that the police have brought to the situation already. And we don't need an additional BID officer pushing that threshold with a sidearm in view for someone that's having a mental health crisis further down and making it further and unattainable for the crisis intervention team. You know, we need that to be more within the crisis intervention team's reach, not further away. Again, Councilperson Merritt, thank you very much for bringing this amendment.
And Leticia Romero.
Hi, my name is Leticia Romero.
Not sure what happened there, Ms. Romero. I apologize.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can, yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. My name is Leticia Romero. I live in Ward 4. I would like to thank Julie Merritt for having the courage to be the only one to step up and to listen to her community members. Thank you, Julie Merritt. I will be telling everybody I know what an awesome leader you are and you have proven yourself to be. My comment has to do with this amendment as well as just the overall budget. And then also my daughter had expressed to me that she also wanted to public comment. She's 6 years old. So I will go ahead and just public comment on this first. Be exceptional in leading Missoula City Council member. Embolden yourselves with vision that takes our community beyond the immediate gratifications of the capitalistic, corrupt, predatory forces beckoning you right now. Allow yourselves to normalize decision-making that cares for the next 7 generations. Inject childlike imagination into those tired, exhausted, drone, sleeping, political brains of yours, and dig earth deep within you and reach for heart, courage that has always been there waiting to rise with you and stand up to the unconcerned rich entities and their bought out foot soldiers who are taking over our city today. The current 2021 proposed city budget is devoid of exceptionalism, vision, imagination, and courage. What of a resilient, caring community speaks to you loud and clear within the spending budget lines? What of looking after one another speaks volumes within your complacent, weekly okays and yeses too? What of the working people having a right to live in the city that they toil in is spelled loud and clear in your presented drab, corrupt budget? What of the homeless folk and families having a safe place to sleep at night makes a blimp in those numbed, desensitized hearts of yours? What of our blessed planet, our Mother Earth, and her inevitable runaway climate, environmental collapse, chaos cries, even slightly ring in your deaf ears as you robotically get ready to pass this horrid budget that screams for the one thing we humans are capable of and proven ourselves of every day, despite the violent and oppressive colonial ways the wealthy think that they can get away with. We have love and creativity abound, plentiful in this city. It is up to you, City Council, to listen and stand courageous with the people of Missoula who have spoken up bravely time and time again, and wait for you to shake off that noxious capitalistic fairy sprinkle dust and embrace exceptional, visionary, and courageous leadership instead. And here's my daughter. Her name's Amelia, and she would like to express her public comment.
You go right ahead.
If I were mayor, I would give all the money to community members and homeless people. Why? Because community members and sick people need it more than all of the police officers in the world. The mayor should be giving money to help the hospitals to get more beds for COVID-19. Rich people have been getting more money, and do they need it? No, because they already have so much money. Homeless and working people in Missoula need homes to live in.
Thank you very much. That was all.
Thank you. And Zuri Moreno.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to comment. My name is Zuri Moreno. I'm calling as a Ward 1 resident here in Missoula. I'm calling as a trans person of color living here in Missoula. And I'm also calling on behalf of the ACLU of Montana, where I am the policy associate. I want to first thank Councilmember Merritt for bringing this amendment. And I want to share with Council a caution around conflating the humanity of an individual like Randy and the inhumanity of an institution. The racism, sexism, and brutality of an institution that can see someone in crisis and also see someone who has a warrant and choose to arrest them instead of providing support or resources. This city council has an amazing opportunity to demonstrate to our Missoula community that investing in the long-term infrastructure of health services and housing support is at the top of their priorities, and that they would not vote to undermine anything they are giving to those support and service systems. By funding another officer, that is what you will be doing. You will be undermining the funding you're giving towards housing, towards this mobile crisis unit, and towards health services. I want to be clear that I'm not here to ask you to defund the police, which I believe the police budget already has more than a $16 million line item. What I am asking for, and what it sounds like so many in our community are asking for, is a courageous step to restore the services and support in our community. What I am asking for is to ensure that those who face marginalization elsewhere in our state may instead find support here and both live as well as thrive in our community. I urge this council to reconsider and amend and approve this amendment that Councilmember Merritt has put forward. I urge you to amend this budget further and focus especially on in this time of need on health and housing services. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? I apologize for earlier. I think my connection was disconnected in the beginning of this call. Can you hear me now? Okay. I just wanted to say, first of all, that I really appreciate the example of Randy Crystal being brought up about from his experience as the BID officer. I want to echo Josh Decker saying that saying that Randy takes money out of his own pocket is not really a good way to support more BID officers. And I think it's also worth noting that when he received the Downtown Employee of the Year award in January and he was interviewed by the Missoulian, his quote to the city was that it felt like stepping out of his officer's uniform to fulfill his duties, which to me, I think speaks volumes that the police officer who's doing this in a way that is not normally like the way a police officer would do it, that he actually had to go outside of the normal boundaries of his police duties to kind of form a new mold. And I think, again, yeah, Randy as a person, I think is showing us that there's a non-police item here, a non-police option that the city has already commended. I mean, we told him that he was the employee of the year. And I think he's kind of showing us that this is maybe what the mobile crisis unit could look like. This does not need to be an officer. Specifically in regards to the amendment, I wanted to ask a point of clarification, which is if we were to turn down this grant, which is a COPS funded grant, a federally funded grant, would that money be able to be redistributed in some way, or is it allocated only? Okay, I'm seeing council members shake their heads. So although I appreciate the amendment, is there anything in the line item that's coming from the general fund? I know several people, including myself, have written in commenting that the purchases of new vehicles is a pretty large line item that the department could probably wait for, especially after the police gave their presentation. The vehicles are certainly not broken down. They're just a little old. I think we could probably wait on buying the new vehicles and save several. It looked like it was a couple $100,000. I think $265,000 to be exact was all the vehicle line items. So I would just thank you, Councilmember Merritt, for proposing that amendment, but maybe we could adjust the amendment asking for something to come out that we could then redistribute those funds rather than just saying no outright to that money and then it wouldn't go anywhere. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And I have Isabella Milch.
Hi, yeah, my name is Izzy Milch. I live in Ward 3, and I just wanted to echo all of those before me in thanking Councilmember Merritt for making this proposal and add my voice to all of theirs in support of it. So again, thank you, Ms. Merritt, for sincerely listening to the concerns and needs of your constituents, and I would urge the rest of you to follow suit. I would also urge you all to consider that your personal positive experiences with one individual police officer, I'm sure Randy is lovely, that does not negate the negative and harmful lived experiences of the hundreds of people who've been contacting you in support of this amendment and others that would further redirect resources away from the police and towards community support. I also wanted to echo what the commenter before me said, which is that in addition to this amendment, it would be extremely helpful to our community to pull funding from other areas rather than simply rejecting this grant outright. So things like showers and the new police cars, I think a lot of that money could be better used elsewhere. But again, thank you, Ms. Merritt, for this amendment, and I would like to wholeheartedly support it. We do not need another business improvement district officer downtown. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Lori Francis. Lori, are you with us? Okay, we'll come back to you, Lori, if we're having technical difficulties. And Caitlin, I'm sorry, Caitlin Pizarchira. Caitlin, are you with us?
Hello, I think there may have been a problem. I am Melody Holler, and I was having trouble with the link that you guys published for registering for this comment.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Excuse me?
Sorry, we've got two people going now. So, Lori, I'm going to mute you. And I'm sorry, the person calling under Caitlin's name, I didn't catch your name. I apologize.
Hello, my name is Melody Holler, and I'm a resident of Ward 4. First, thank you for listening to the public comment that you are hearing today. I would like to continue by echoing the disappointment that you've already heard today regarding your choices to continue to support policing in response to social problems that merit other solutions. And to the council members who will vote to reject this amendment, I want you to note and deeply understand that the consequences of this additional officer will be on your hands. Whatever interactions this additional police officer has with Missoula residents will be your responsibility. If situations are escalated, if people are hurt, if lives are ruined, it will be the result of this decision today. More broadly, I hope that you keep the consequences of your actions in mind. I hope that those moral implications will empower you to reconsider your support of Missoula's trend of a rapidly growing and militarizing police force. Thank you. And in order to give Caitlin her actual space to speak here, I'm going to leave this call, and it might be helpful if this position is given another opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Francis, are you with us now?
I think I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Thank you all for your presence and your long evening, and thank you all to the contributors as well. I'm speaking currently for Partnership Health Center. I'm the executive director there, and I really appreciate your interest and involvement in responding to crises that happen in Missoula daily, many of them. And as I have said to the chair of the council, I'm very excited about this opportunity. It's an incredible intervention, and it is very insufficient. And it's not your fault necessarily, but we live in a society where opportunities are unequally distributed. So I appreciate your support. I really like the idea that we're doing this. It is a tweak to the status quo and not a change to the underlying problems that cause people to live on the street. I don't think Missoula alone carries that weight, but how we move forward together, I think this is a really incredible start. We want to think about changing the odds, not overcoming the odds. People that live on the street end up there because they come from difficult families, difficult histories. They have experienced discrimination. And as all the previous speakers have stated, I don't know that it's a police issue. I think it's a deeply rooted institutional discrimination issue. And we are really excited to be part of that change and know that it's insufficient. So I'm not speaking to any of the amendments, but I do want to say thank you to the speakers and thank you to the council members. I really appreciate your commitment to Missoula. And as at PHC, we are living in the context of a country that does discriminate, and the city is part of that context. I'm excited to reach out to BIPOC members, to veterans, to other homeless folks, to people with other abilities. And I know that with Brad Davis, we will be doing that. So again, thank you guys. It's not enough, but it's a really good start. It's a larger Band-Aid to societal issues. And I hope together we can start to redesign the society in which we live here such that all people have equal opportunity for good mental and physical health. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francis. Back to amendments. I've got Mark Anderlich.
Yes, hello. Mark Anderlich, Ward 2. I want to thank Councilmember Merritt for her amendment. I think that, and I'd like to echo, a lot of people have said what I was going to say as well, but the one difference here, I think, in that I would urge all the council members to support Councilmember's Merritt amendment, mainly because this is an opportunity to restructure how it is we provide public safety. According to a 2018 review by the National Academy of Sciences on the effectiveness of police in the community at preventing crime and doing it in the most advanced proactive methods that they have, the results aren't very good. And 6 to 20% perhaps in the short term of crimes prevented by the police in actual fact. Now, that's not a very high success rate. That would get an F grade in any sort of school. And I'm not here to bash the police. I know people on the police force. I have a neighbor that works in the police department, and I have high regard for them. This is really about a structural change. And structural change does not come easily, and it does, and it seems very scary at first. But I think people before me were very articulate about how the position, in the downtown, a second BID position, that's not a police position. That's something that can be handled by other trained professionals. And one last note, I'm not going to share all. I've got a prepared statement for the overall budget, but I would like to say that in the midst of this kind of change, this is a true opportunity to not bash the police, but to basically change the job that they do and narrow it down to things that are absolutely essential. And I look forward to that debate in the future. But much of their work that as citizens we have thrown upon them is quite unfair to the police and is very ineffective for solving the problems that we want to solve in our community. So I would urge everyone to reassess their opposition to Councilmember Merritt's, you can apply for a COPS grant next year, right? And part of, I'm familiar with COPS grants too. I've worked with neighborhoods not here in Montana in getting those. And it really kind of, they sort of narrowly tailor the grant application in and of itself for specific things, which I think the National Academy of Sciences has shown has really utterly failed. So here's an opportunity for making the beginning change. And if you can't come to support Councilmember Merritt's amendment, I would urge you to basically vote to, I think there's a term for it, but to take out the police budget, that we can debate this further and maybe approve an amended version of that budget later in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Daniel Carlino.
Oh, thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Julie Merritt, for proposing that amendment. I'm here, I live in Ward 3, and I'm here on the call because I'm concerned about our community's safety, and I'm concerned about our democracy. If you were public servants, you would have seen the days of protests in Missoula, the thousands of comments coming to your emails, people commenting here week after week, all in favor of demilitarizing the Missoula police and investing in our community instead. But I guess you're taking it in the wrong direction still. If you heard out our community, then you would be in favor of Julie Merritt's amendment and vote along with this. Missoula has been begging you all to listen to our BIPOC community, to listen to Missoulians who have been speaking out on this issue. You've been the mayor here for a long time, Mayor Engen, and I don't think you've ever seen such a amount of protests and comments coming in for a budget like this before. So if you're really public servants, then you would listen to what Missoulians are saying and vote in favor of Julie Merritt's amendment. Thanks.
Thank you. And Michael Herbert.
My name is McCall Herbert. I am in Ward 1.
I apologize for the mispronunciation.
I would like to also thank Councilperson Julie Merritt for her very brave amendment to the budget and for listening to the community over the course of this budget hearing. I would like to bring to your attention that there is no need for Missoula to do the case study. The Six Pony Hitch is doing a project, and that is also a project that does not need to be done by Missoula. But in addition, we already know that further policing unhoused and housing insecure people does not work and is not the way to house our friends and neighbors that have gone through rough times. That is not the appropriate response to having unhoused and housing insecure people in the area. The majority of Americans are 2 lost paychecks or 1 major medical emergency away from losing everything. Bankruptcy is caused most often in this country by medical problems. Even you, council people, are most likely only a few bad months away from losing your homes. And not anything that you did, nothing that you would deserve to lose everything you have. But the reality is the majority of the people on the streets are trying their very hardest to be secure, to be housed, and did nothing to put themselves in an unsafe, unhoused situation. And please consider whether or not you would prefer to have an officer with very little training and a gun coming up to you and talking to you, perhaps kicking you out of locations, and maybe even giving you money out of his own pocket? Or would you prefer to have a highly trained social worker with personal and direct connections to all of the services in town, and some that are more statewide or even national, and that has already been proven to work very well to decrease repeat 911 calls and the number of people in jail, and in addition, to actually get you some help that you need? These studies have been done before. Utah has seen tremendous success in housing unhoused people and assigning them social workers, and it has had a huge amount of success in keeping people in homes. People cannot begin to improve their lives until they feel stable and secure, and the way to help people feel stable and secure is to have trained, highly trained, compassionate personnel helping them get their lives back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. And Caitlin?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, this is actually Caitlin. Thank you for the opportunity to comment, and to others who've spoken so far. My name is Caitlin Pazurcia, and I'm calling as a representative of the Montana chapter of the Sierra Club. I'm also calling as a Ward 3 resident. First, I'd like to voice my personal support for Julie Merritt's amendment to remove the proposed BID officer from the budget in the name of scaling back the number of the functions police are expected to play in our city and moving away from the policing of homelessness, not further cementing this function. Relatedly, on behalf of the Montana chapter, I'd also like to express more general support for the community request to divert the proposed police budget increase to health and housing services. As an organization, we aim to support work in the name of environmental protection and improving lives. We believe working towards a just and livable future for all in the face of coronavirus, the evolving climate crisis, and other outside threats requires addressing existing racial and economic injustices in our community, including those evident in our current policing system and underinvestment in community needs. Instead of increasing the police budget in the upcoming fiscal year, we need urgent funding to address demonstrated community needs like health and housing directly, especially at a time when it is becoming increasingly difficult for community members to get those needs met. We urge you to reallocate the originally proposed police budget increases towards addressing the more pressing needs in our community directly, and I would urge you also to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jenny Vader.
Hi, this is Jenny Vader. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm in Ward 6. Thank you, Julie Merritt, for bringing this amendment, which I support. I agree with the public comments made before me, and I have little content to add, but I only want to say that I've been listening to these city council meetings around the city budget since the beginning of the conversations, and I've heard overwhelming support for reallocating funding from the police department to affordable housing and community health services. These comments have come from diverse community members and several community organizations. I think I've heard only one comment that I can remember in support of funding for the police. It's disheartening to hear that council members have already made up your minds on amendments before you hear public comments on these calls, and that even after dozens of commenters call in, your votes rarely, if ever, change. Unless I'm missing something, it sounds like the community is in support of this and other amendments that redirect funds to public housing, public health, and community development. It's your role to listen and respect our wish for how this city should be governed. It's why you were elected. Please take this time to listen, consider how many people you're hearing from, and consider you're changing your minds to support this amendment and related ones. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam Kula.
Hey, can you hear me, Council?
We can.
I sure appreciate your time taking my call. I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'm in Ward 3, and I appreciate all the discussion that's going into this. It's very cool that Julie Merritt has taken the risk to propose an amendment that is reflective of the overwhelming sentiment of the people in the community. And I'd like to just take note, it's already been done, that The majority of these calls that we're hearing tonight are in favor of her amendment and in favor of reallocating funding overall. I'm not hearing a lot of calls to the contrary. I'm a little bit shocked when I hear support for continued increased police funding in light of all these obvious comments and desires of the people in the town. If I was seeing something else, I probably wouldn't feel so shocked. And it's great that Randy, the current BID officer, is a nice guy. We're lucky to have him on staff, but that doesn't really pertain to the prospects of hiring additional officers. I believe we have 113 officers or somewhere thereabouts. That's a lot of people, you know, and 114, I don't think that's going to change the overall picture of where we're headed. If you're a homeless person on the street, just run that as a thought experiment for 5 seconds here. Ask yourself how much an armed officer is going to be helpful to you. If you're a business owner who doesn't want homeless people in front of their business, I could see that being pretty helpful. But if we're trying to help our fellow citizens, some of which don't have homes and don't have income, they don't need armed officers. They need something else, which is what I think people are calling for. I'm all for spending money. I'm all for increasing budgets if it's useful stuff, but we've tried with the police budget. And as we welcome Chief White to the town, which we're very lucky to have him and his expertise, what I'm really eager to see from him is his skills as a peacemaker rather than more budget requests. And I would urge the department to ride with the current budget allocations for a year under his leadership and see what kind of changes we can make before we talk about new cars, locker rooms, things like that. A lot of us in Missoula, we drive old cars and we get by just fine. It's nice to have the police kind of on the same page. I don't have showers or locker rooms at work. I don't know how many people here do. I had that once when I worked a ski season out of town at a 5-star resort. That's not really the type of association I make with the police department. I believe the budget needs to be sent back to committee and remain at current levels while we address, you know, kind of how we're going to change as a community. And having forums like this is a great opportunity for us to really get together and see how Missoula can be a leader in the region for, you know, changing how we use public money to address these sincere needs. So I'd like to thank everybody for your time. I'm through.
Thank you. And on the motion to amend, Matt Larson.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm just going to get it all out right now, and you won't have to hear from me again. Again, I think we're hearing from, I'm losing count now just tonight. I think we've heard 11 people who would support any one of you, any single one of you to send this back to committee. I think it would be an interesting temperature to take as to where we all are as individuals and how we represent our constituents. We can see then clearly, transparently, how you will vote. And I want them, the council, you, to send this back and reevaluate. Let's just start with the police budget. We don't have to go further than that. And we can pass all the other stuff that you won't let us see until today. We've heard caller after caller express this desire. We've only heard one caller, Jay Stanford, actually go in support of police spending, and he owns a police and emergency supply company, and he was speed lined into the meeting by Marty Rabine's personal iCloud account. This just shows like the ludicrousness that's going on here. We need to take it a step down and go back to common sense and representing the people who elect you. So everyone's watching. Send it back. Send it back to committee. I relinquish the rest of my time. Thank you. Have a great night.
All right. Seeing no additional hands up in the audience with regard to the amendment, back to council discussion on the amendment. Further discussion. All right. Seeing none, by virtue of the fact that we're in a virtual environment, we will have a roll call vote on the amendment.
Just a moment here. I'm waiting for my agenda software. Okay, on the amendment to remove the additional business improvement district officer from the budget. Contos.
No.
Harp.
No.
Hess.
No.
Jones.
No.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Cheryl.
No.
Vasika.
No.
Von Lossberg.
No.
West.
No.
Anderson. Anderson.
No.
Sarah.
No.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 11 no's and 1 yes.
And the motion fails. We are back to the main motion. Is there further discussion? Mr. Von Osberg?
Mr. Mayor, process-wise, are you going to public comment and then an additional opportunity to comment?
I'm waiting for council members to discuss, and then I'll call for public comment on the entire budget.
And after public comment?
Not necessarily, but we'll see. I'll ask.
We'll wait.
Okay, further discussion on the budget. Ms. Cheryl.
I think I'm tracking where we are in this. So is Brad still on, right? I'm curious with the BID officer, will there be, I mean, I know that you answered as far as how they would interact with the mobile crisis unit, but I'm curious about more specific training in that realm.
Can you hear me?
We can.
It looks like the host has stopped my video, but I do have audio, so I'll start. Yeah, so to answer that question, yes, so the BID officers, like Randy, sorry, 1 second here, technical stuff. Okay, we're back. Thank you for the question. So we talked briefly about how that BID officer would work directly with that mobile crisis unit. And furthermore, as I talked about this whole program, let me just take one step back. And there was a question earlier during public comment. I do want to make sure I take the time to address Evelyn's questions. I know Lori spoke to it briefly, but this whole, as I spoke earlier about stakeholders and everything, as this process is moving very quickly, at this juncture, I'm very keened in on operations and getting the lift of operations up and running. So as I spoke about stakeholders, that's kind of where my mind is at right now, and the priorities are right now as far as getting the stakeholders to get this thing up and running operationally. But make no mistake, I view this as a community project, this mobile crisis unit response. And absolutely, we will, as the program develops, we'll bring in all the key players and have plenty of time for public comment and interactions and other stakeholder meetings, as well as ones I discussed earlier. So just wanted to make that clear. And then to answer your question, part of this, what do I want to call it? The vision that I'm trying to build in the fire department is also going to be a CIT program manager. And that CIT training with officers like Randy and all of our police officers and first responders is going to be a huge part of this, and their ability to recognize mental health situations and de-escalation, how to communicate, and when to know basically how to address those situations. So that's a huge component of it. And as we talk about the stakeholders and dealing, administratively, I do feel that those BID officers are going to be a very critical link. A CIT trained police officer with the interest of the community in mind is going to be a very critical component of this team approach for a mobile crisis response team and that community type approach.
Thank you. Ms. Merritt.
I think I still have a process question. So after we vote on the budget, are we going to have another chance to comment, or will we be done at that point?
We will be done at that point.
If I may, then I have another comment about the overall process, I guess, that I would like to make.
Sure.
Okay. I want to thank all of the people who have taken time to reach out. We've gotten like so many more emails this time around than in the last couple of budget cycles that I've been involved in. And it's been about a far-reaching issues where in the past, I think the vast majority of the comments that we've gotten have all just been about taxes and not wanting to see property taxes go up. So I appreciate the involvement from people. I want to give a shout out to the 1700 for Liberation group and all of the people who have taken time, not just to send us, a comment that's just a talking point, or worse yet, the number of insulting emails that we have gotten from all sides. But I want the people who have taken the time to become educated about our budget process and the work of the city government. It's easy to just, whip off that insulting email, but it's quite another thing to take the time to learn about the issues and how those issues manifest themselves in our community. And I want to thank you for your time you have taken to communicate with us personally on council, to ask questions and to listen. I've spoken with a number of constituents who've asked really good questions and listened to those responses. I feel like I've learned something from those conversations. The level of engagement that we've had around this budget cycle has been far-ranging. Like I said, way more than the past couple of years. This level of engagement has been amazing, and active and engaged citizenry, I believe, leads to a healthy democracy. And I'm grateful to everyone who has participated. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Merritt. Mr. Von Osberg?
Thanks. I'll use the opportunity to speak to a couple things. One is I want to acknowledge the interest in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I want to assure people and highlight the investment that's coming in that from a few different sources that puts it well beyond actually the $1 million mark that folks have talked about in some of the input. There's a general fund contribution of $750,000. It's the largest general fund investment to address a community need that I've seen during my time on council. And I think this is indicative of a direction that we're headed. When you look at additional assets that will be coming into that fund, as well as the MRA contribution to affordable housing work, we're well beyond the $1 million mark. And we're also fiscally prudent in the amount of money that we can actually deploy from that fund. We're fully meeting the request from the housing office and committing resources via other tools like via the MRA, as I mentioned. There's also a long list of investments in affordable housing purchases. The Bellagio has come up at about 1.4 million, the Sleeping Inn 1.1 million, the Scott Street purchase at 6.6 million. And then through the Office of Housing and Community Development, there's about $4 million of investment in this budget that goes toward homelessness, affordable housing, conservation, social justice issues, and community development. And folks can see a detailed breakdown of those sorts of investments. I have a particular passion around energy and the city's investments in climate change work, as well as our 100% clean electricity initiative. This budget continues those investments with critical partners in the community that help us with those initiatives, groups like Climate Smart Missoula and Home Resource, as well as our Zero Waste initiative. And there's some additional funding in the budget around working with other communities on our 100% clean electricity initiative. And I think lastly, for the time being, I think that it's really important to focus on one particular funding allocation in this budget that is likely to be one of the most important things we do in the years ahead. And that's, it's a $91,000, almost $92,000 investment via the Parks and Recreation Department, working in collaboration with Missoula County Public Schools to pilot a program at Lowell School that we hope will serve as a pilot for other schools in the community. This has been a collaboration, and I want to recognize the vision of Principal Barbara Frank at Lowell. She is the one that came to Lowell, saw a need around the school with her students and in the surrounding neighborhood, brought forth an ambitious vision to that effect, has coalesced a group of people to work on that, including folks from the Parks Department, and this almost $100,000 investment in assisting in that pilot is going to be a critical thing, and I'm really proud to support it. There's lots of other sections, but I'll just leave my comments at that for the time being.
Ms. Hart?
Thank you. This budget reflects a lot of community values. And I'm going to just take a few minutes here to kind of give you my take on things. I don't think oftentimes we get the opportunity to actually speak how we feel and what we learn about, because words matter, behavior matters, and teams matter. I recognize that I am part of numerous teams and that I do not operate in the world that solely centers around me. I play on hockey teams. I am part of a family. I'm a Kiwanian. I'm loosely associated with the Interfaith Collaborative. I'm a business unit. Boards of nonprofits or teams are as well. And the teams I'm a part of are essential to the quality of Missoula, just as yours are. And not a single team I've been a part of have ever shown up wanting to underperform. But sometimes we do, despite of our best intentions. Leadership changes provide opportunities for innovation, a new vision emerges, and we try again together as a team revised. Police Chief Jason White was hired to bring a new vision to the police department. I don't pretend to know what he thinks, but I do appreciate the expectation levied upon him in today's divisive environment. Similarly, in my role at Habitat for Humanity, I have been bestowed with similar expectations of transformation. To become a more effective leader, I've embraced Abraham Lincoln's approach of befriending his rivals. I've learned that ignoring the voices of minority groups does not teach empathy, be they Black, Indigenous, people of color, same-sex couples, people with disabilities, those previously incarcerated, Bobcat fans in this town, or libertarians. As the chief executive, I too suffer from limited resources to implement all the changes I feel need to be addressed to address our growing customer demand. Employee morale is central to my organization's functional health. And just like any other company, nonprofit, sole proprietor, government, school, or church, our people are crucial to our success. Pats on the back are appreciated, but they don't pay the rent. I know my team deserves better wages, and I'm working to grow them incrementally. To better reflect our community's demographics, I'm pursuing ways to be more radically inclusive across the board, staff, partner families, donors, and our supply chain. I believe that I need to give Chief White the same benefit of the doubt bestowed upon me back in March. He came here with the expectation to address concerns of safety, homelessness, poverty, and mental health in our justice system. This community has repeatedly voiced its desire to not criminalize poverty, and I believe that he wants to make this world a better place too. If you are at a point in your life where you no longer have to worry about the bills, please consider yourself lucky. The reality is that 1 in 4 Missoulians suffer terribly from being cost burdened for housing. And this burden takes its toll in far worse ways than peaceful protests. Families are evicted for not having enough money for rent. It is no wonder that people desperate for something to dispel the pain find solace in substance abuse. Domestic violence erupts over lack of money matters, not from having too much. The angst is taken out on innocent children who often mirror the behaviors that surround them, and the cycle repeats itself over and over. Chief White advocates for many system improvements in this year's budget, as reflected. I wouldn't be surprised if there are others left on the cutting room floor. These are intended to lift morale, thereby improving the chances of better community policing. However, I suspect he also recognizes that all the training in the world will still fall on some deaf ears. An effective executive calls the underperformers no matter the organization, and I encourage Chief White to do the same. This is the type of accountability I believe the vast majority of Missoulians need to lift their morale. You matter, we all matter. Thank you.
Ms. Jones.
I have a lot of thoughts and comments I'd like to share, but I guess I'd like to hear public comment first. So I'm just going to put a place marker there and come back to that after public comment.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I also have thoughts and comments on the budget, but I look forward to hearing from our public as well tonight. So I will echo my placeholder behind Ms. Jones.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your opportunity to debate this budget. So if you're done debating, let me know.
Okay, well, with that, then I will make my comments very brief because I want to hear from the public. But I will say that I echo Ms. Merritt's thank you to everyone who has taken the time to write in. I would say that there has been a massive emails on all sides, and there is no clear consensus in our community. And it is our job to sort of do the best we can for the most people, do the most good for the most people with this budget. One of the things that we have set out from the beginning is that there is no interest in this current climate to raise taxes from the city standpoint. And so that was one of the things that we set out in terms of trying to craft a budget that tries to do the most good that we can. I look at this budget, and many of you have heard me say this, and I look at it as a both and. I do not subscribe to the one or the other, but a both and. Missoula deserves and demands to have a well-trained and thoughtful and equipped police department. It also deserves and demands to have investments in housing, social services, and social justice. And no one budget is going to do it all. And there shouldn't be the expectation for it to be so. I also have thought a lot about the fact that Missoula sits inside a county, and there's an entire county government and funding sources, and every single Missoulian who lives in the city limits is also a county resident, and you pay county taxes, and those county resources go to various things in our community. You also are a resident of the state of Montana, and you pay fees and taxes, and there's various funding sources for all of that. So looking at one singular line item in the Missoula city budget doesn't tell the whole story of everything that's happening in our community. And there is no better example of that than the mobile crisis unit that we spent a bit of time talking about earlier this evening. One of the emails we received was very short and simple, and it simply said, allocating $75,000 to the mobile crisis unit is a slap in the face. And I would agree with that if that was all we were actually allocating. But I think that there is a much broader picture being told within the funding sources of the mobile crisis unit. We are investing close to $500,000 in this program, but the funding sources come from all of the partnerships I laid out. There is an investment from the state within the grant from the DPHHS. There's investment from the county with their matching grant. There's investment from the city, and there is investment from a tribal grant that the CJCC was able to bring in. So there is lots in our community that is not always as easy to tell the story with just one singular line item budget. It's a both and. Missoula City is doing things and Missoula County, and we are trying to shift investments to recognize that there are many people in our community who are struggling. And this budget isn't going to fix all of that, but I think it's a significant investment through the mobile crisis unit, through all of the, it's over actually, Mr. Von Lossberg, I don't mean to correct you, but the updated number from Aaron Pehan is over $5 million in investment in housing, social services, and social justice. 1.75 of that being the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, as well as significant investments in our community provider partners, the Bellagio, and too numerous of agencies and investments to name. But this budget isn't a unicorn budget, as Ms. Pehan, I think, said in our last budget meeting. But I think that we are trying to do the most good with what we can. And I look forward to hearing from the community.
Cheryl.
I'll try to keep my comments somewhat brief. This is the first budget season that I've come through. I feel that we brought, it came as a strong budget. We brought amendments on Wednesday that I'm really proud of, I'm happy about. City budgets are very complex, as many of our constituents have realized, having really, dug into it. I can tell by some of the comments, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the engagement. We have received, I lost count a long time ago, but we have received a lot of public feedback, and what we have received in these meetings is actually a really, really small percentage of it. It's been on both sides. There is no clear consensus what our community would like. I feel like this budget is a good reflection of the values of our community. I think that it's a very large ship to turn. Municipal budget is so complex, having run organizational budgets. We are responsible for public safety. And I think that shifting that in a way that, focuses on training, focuses on having a mobile crisis unit. I know that the Trinity, the Crisis Center is not built yet. That's unfortunate, but it's going to be, and we have funding for that. So all those things coming together is definitely the right direction for me. And it's the right direction for all of us. I also want to just say that I believe, although many times I disagree with different colleagues on this budget or on different things, I feel confident that every single one of the council people and the mayor that are sitting here are trying to do the right thing for our community. And I want to thank every one of them for spending the amount of time that I know that they have to look through this budget and vote with what you think is a smart, strategic, safe direction for the city. And so I want to thank the public for being engaged, and I want to also thank my colleagues.
Ms. West.
Hi, thank you. I guess I actually want to start out with a thank you to my award mate and Council President Brian Von Lossberg. I think he has done a great job running these meetings and this budget season. I know it was challenging, and I know from the amount of time that we have spent discussing and the amount of time that I'm sure he has, that I know he's done reaching out to community stakeholders, that this has been an exceptionally challenging, a discussion to facilitate, and that there's many stakeholders that have been involved in this process. And I guess I also want to say that I think there has been a really pivotal shift in the comments that we've been getting. This is my 5th budget season, and I think that for most of my time on council, it has been very much a discussion around, you know, raising property taxes versus not raising property taxes. And I think with this budget cycle, we have shifted to an acknowledgement that, you know, those property taxes actually fund services and programs that are vital to the well-being of our community overall, and that there is disagreement about where those funds maybe should be best allocated, but at least we're talking about that versus just the reality of being, you know, funded by property taxes, and not the merits of where those are allocated. I think it's super important. I will say that I've struggled somewhat with the, I guess, the representation that our city budget is a police budget versus the housing Department of Housing and Community Development scenario. And I just, you know, echo, I think, what Ms. Anderson said, is that there's so much more to our budget than just these two, and that they're not in direct opposition to each other. Our entire budget, if it passes, is $227,835,669 million. Well, $227,835,669, which is a huge budget, and it encompasses, you know, 11% of that is our police budget, which is significant. It's 30% of our general fund, but it also includes lots of other things that contribute to the health and well-being of our citizenry, including, you know, things like parks, which are hugely important, housing, streets, some huge improvements across Missoula that'll really help people get around, whether it's by bike, as a pedestrian, or by car. And all of these things work together to make Missoula what it is. And I think that we need to look at our budget holistically, and not as, you know, a duality of two departments. I guess that's what I have to say.
Mr. Mayor,
You're muted.
I think he was telling me that I was going next. Stop me if I'm wrong. But...
I was, Mr. Carlino. Thank you.
Oh, I'm also Carlino. Cool. Okay. My name is actually Devin Jack Russo. I don't know how this mix-up has happened. That's fun. But anyways, my name is Devin Jack Russo. I live in Ward 5. And is this just like general public comment?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, I have a few general things to say. I'd just like to say first and foremost, in relation to like the officer downtown and just generally speaking, I personally feel it makes a lot more sense to defund the police and invest more in fund housing and healthcare, specifically mental health care, put more money into the crisis intervention team, put more money into the housing fund. I think, long story short, that's what I want. But I guess, and I think that's what basically everyone here is for, at least who's making public comments. Evidently, most of you are not here for that. But that being said, I would just like to say as well that I guess point out to all of you sitting on council right now that I know more or less, I'd say about 75% of the people who made public comment, and every single one of them were some of the most powerful, influential organizers in the entire city. And that being said, I'm sure there are a lot of you who are looking for re-election. And I would just like you all to keep that in mind when you make your votes, cast your votes. There are a lot of very powerful organizers behind this cause. And yeah, we'll see how much longer some of you are around. As I remember correctly, there are 11 of you who voted against the BID officer downtown, or sorry, voted for it, and 1 who voted against. And I know I personally am going to remember that. I think a number of other people are going to remember that. And yeah, I mean, I think that's something you all should take into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Mr. Larson? Mr. Larson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, this entire budget is not reflective of the community. Nobody except everyone who's participated, except the 1 caller that I've already mentioned, has told you this. You won't even release the core documents until today. So send it back to committee and just make the motion and just see where everybody's at on this. Like the previous caller said, we're all watching. We all want to know. Just be transparent with us, because otherwise it just seems as though you guys are being transparent in the sense that it doesn't matter what we say and you're just going to do whatever it is you want to do. I mean, that's very transparent as well. So I guess we're at a crossroads here. So I think we should pose to ourselves as council members and community members in Missoula, Montana, what we want our legacies to reflect. How do we want to have the world watch us? Are we going to be 10 years behind Portland? Is that the status quo? Is that what you want? Like you're just now establishing this mental health crisis unit and patting yourselves on the back? Great. I'm sorry, I'm disturbing other people. That's how concerned I am here. You know, it's ridiculous. It's always a talk of what will be next year. It's never what's addressed right now, right here. And that's what the community is voicing to you. And so just take the penalty from the state, delay your budget, and do what the community wants you to do. It's not that hard. And I look forward to the ACLU's further investigations into other departments of the city, such as the city attorney's office. And I look forward to other revelations we might find within the MPD, which we are currently finding, and which you are currently going to go down the path of funding at the detriment of other people's lives. It's disgusting. Thank you very much for your time. I yield the rest to anyone else who wants to talk.
And Mr. Elder, Jacob Elder.
Hi, I'm Jacob Elder, and I'm running in 2021 to be Missoula's next mayor. So as a person of color in the city of Missoula, I think that most of our police are incredible individuals, yet they need strong leadership at the top. As a sergeant in the Marine Corps, my Marines were only as good as their leader. Our police are good people, but the system is broken. The fundamental change needs to originate from city leaders, not from the police. The politicians make the laws and policies that the police follow. So it's on us to give more consideration to our broken system. Thanks for your time, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mark Anderlich.
Yes, Mark Anderlich, Ward 2. You know, many say that defunding the police is, you know, a dumb idea, right? Because we assume that the police, as a system, not individually, but as a system, are effective. And so, and I assume that too. And this is about, you know, spending money where it's most effective. Well, as I had said before, and I really invite you to look up the National Academy of Sciences review in 2018 of the most advanced, you know, police strategies. That's proactive policing. It has really come short. In fact, it only provides a clear short-term benefit in reducing crime calls of 6 to 20%. The rest of the policing strategies were inconclusive, ineffective, or had other problems, such as racial profiling. No evidence of long-term crime reduction were found in this review. And using current practices, the police in the best of circumstances does not prevent 80 crime. And the police are only one part of a much larger system, which we haven't touched upon, and I'm not expecting the council to address this, but I think context is very important. You know, once someone's arrested of a crime and the courts convict and sentence them to prison, in Montana, the recidivism rate is between 50 to 70% of that person in the first 3 years of committing a new crime. You know, in contrast, Norway has a 20% recidivism rate, okay? And there are other ways of dealing with problems of public safety and of crime than the kind of one size fits all. In fact, I think we can see this in the Randy, the BID officer, and in the mental health crisis units. Furthermore, as Mr. Elder had just said, we make illegal activities that are not criminal, okay, such as drug use, prostitution, and in some cities, not Missoula, peaceful protests. And we keep legal activities that are criminal, such as climate destruction or exploitation of workers and police murder. The public safety strategy of targeting people who use drugs or who sleep in the streets or who are native and wearing a hoodie is very expensive and a tragic failure. Lives are ruined and millions of dollars are spent, hard-earned citizen tax money, and there's very little to show except expanding prisons, a revolving criminal justice door, and a population that has come to distrust the law, which is an outcome I don't think any of us want. So you have an opportunity, you've had an opportunity, and you know, it seems like the budget's going to pass as is, to really take a very first step in, and it's going to take a long time. I'm you know, not going to sit here and say that you can solve all the problems with, you know, changing the budget right now. But when is that step going to be taken? You know, when is that? When are you going to take seriously, I think, the fact that, you know, what we come to see as policing and public safety is maybe we're going down the wrong path in its ineffectiveness as demonstrated by lots of studies. So, and I want to end with one quote from
about 4 minutes, Mr. Angeles.
Oh, okay, sorry. Just one last quote. Brooklyn College sociologist Alex Vitale, who's the author of The End of Policing, which I would recommend everyone to read, recently said, "We just cannot fix policing with a set of superficial technocratic reforms because they don't address the way the most basic needs of people have themselves been defunded, creating the, quote, crime that must be policed in the first place." Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Evelyn Wall. I'm sorry. Caroline Lauer.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, Caroline.
Hi, good evening. My name is Caroline Lauer. I'm a resident in Ward 4, and I'm speaking from my personal perspective tonight. I want to start by thanking each of you for your careful thought and deliberations on this year's budget. It's easy to comment from the sidelines, far harder to be the one making the decisions. And as a recent member of the planning board, I've become far too familiar with the fact that every decision involves a loss. So thank you. As a governing board, you've already made several hard decisions to help our community, contributing important funding to the Bellagio, resolving to provide Missoulians with 100% clean electricity, purchasing the Sleepy Inn, to name a few. This budget certainly includes many great components, which you all have rightfully highlighted during tonight's discussion. My question isn't whether those existing budget allocations are good. The question is whether they are enough and whether they meet the scale of the problem. We have been operating in a scarcity framework for far too long at both the federal and the municipal levels, fighting for budget allocations at the margins to address issues that sit at the core. I know you have been inundated with calls and comments, and I understand there is a great deal of nuance to each of these decisions. I also understand that much of this will occur over the next several years with careful and dedicated work from staff and future elected officials. The essence, however, of what so many of us are calling for tonight and before is that we no longer budget at the margins. We have the money. We can strike at the root of issues instead of hacking at the branches, to paraphrase Henry David Thoreau. Thank you again for what you've already done. It is more than most municipalities and certainly satisfactory. But in working with many of you on climate issues, I've come to know you as progressive leaders who don't settle for good enough. I and so many others believe the moment demands more. It demands our best selves. It demands listening to people who have been ignored. It demands big structural change and a bold imaginary vision for the future. So thank you for your time now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lauer. And now, Evelyn Wall.
Thank you, Council, for your hard work tonight and over the past few weeks working on this. I appreciate all of you working so incredibly hard to get this across the line. I just wanted to say that I hope that we can continue to create meaningful dialogue and stakeholder involvement earlier in the process as we move forward. This budget sounds like it's gonna pass as it is, but I know that we've been hearing from a lot of advocates. I think that there are a lot of Missoulians that are really involved in this budget cycle and want to be involved in city government, and I would love to see us more formalize the channels in which we can get community members access. So I hope moving forward, we can, make commitments to make channels available to folks so they can get input earlier on with how we are designing and responding to all of the different challenges, COVID, discrimination, economic disparities, all of those things that come into the future here and now. And I look forward to working with all of you. I think very highly of our council, and I appreciate your guys' time today. So thank you.
Thank you. And Sam Kula.
Hey, thanks again for taking my comment. This is great discussion, and I really feel lucky to live in a town where we can have a discussion like this on any level, regardless of the outcome. So first of all, thank you, Council, for your cool heads and well thought out statements. I want to echo Jackaruso, Larson, Elder, and Anderlich, who've all previously called in. These people are on point. To speak to the council member Cheryl's statement about context, where we live in a county and we live in a state. Yeah, it is complicated, and we live in all these different contexts. And we also live in a nation where people are communicating more fluidly and where we are responsible and responsive to the national narrative. And that is something that we can make our own statement as a city on through how we use our money. And I know the police budget's been singled out as like this, piece of the larger pie here, and that's where a lot of the debate is. And it's because it's the biggest opportunity we have to weigh in as a community. And it's something that I, just to reiterate previous callers, think should be held as the rest of the budget passes. There's some really good stuff, just to say it, in the rest of the budget. I'm absolutely excited about the electric trucks for the Parks Department, for example, and the other collaborations that are going on there. But when it comes to this increase in police funding, and we're not, defunding police is not on the table in Missoula. That's not even what we're talking about. We're just talking about giving more money or staying the same, essentially. It seems like one of the least representative moves the council could make to increase police funding. And I would really encourage people watching this meeting to take note of how your council members vote on this thing and where you would weigh in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Emily Withall.
Hi, my name is Emily Withnall. I commented last week and I've been sending emails.
I am a graduate of from the Environmental Studies program. I'm a queer single mom. I'm a writer, an educator, and I say all of those things because I'm also someone who experienced domestic violence. And I think that when we speak broadly about groups of people, like when we say BIPOC or we say domestic violence victims, we don't capture the complexity of those human beings who are actually encountering police calls. I want to share that 4 years ago, I witnessed my neighbor being assaulted by her boyfriend. I witnessed the police showing up, getting in her face, questioning her, telling her they thought she was lying because she didn't want to admit it, because she knew that they couldn't do anything to keep her safe, and they didn't. They left without tracking him down. They left with him then threatening me and my family, and her being much more unsafe. I have talked to numerous police officers over the years since then, and all of them tell me the same thing over and over, is that victims don't cooperate. Victims can't cooperate. And if police, and I know that the Missoula Police Department receives training in domestic violence and sexual assault, but if they had adequate training, they would know why victims can't always be honest when they aren't able to stay safe. So I am speaking about this completely from a domestic violence standpoint, but this holds true for so many other communities and people in Missoula as well. How officers respond to a domestic violence incident has a lifelong impact on a victim's safety or ability to seek justice. If, for example, officers can't figure out who's at fault because the victim fought back, they will arrest both the abuser and the victim. This record makes it impossible for victims later to seek justice or remain safe. On top of that, domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness in the US. Last year, 40% of crimes were related to domestic violence in Missoula. And we rank second in the number of most domestic violence incidents and first in sexual assault incidents in the state of Montana. 40% of officers, those who admitted it, so the number could be higher, commit domestic violence themselves. Only 19% of departments across the country terminate officers for this if it's even discovered in the first place. Because which spouse of a police officer would call the police for help? So my point behind this is that I've been hearing a lot about how training is going to be the solution, and training doesn't work. The training that's already in place for domestic violence and sexual assault is not working. The response that is given to domestic violence victims is not compassionate. It doesn't keep victims safe, and it's something that would be much better suited for a mobile crisis unit. So I hear all these numbers and how much money is being put into housing and how much money is going towards the mobile crisis unit. And if those are capped or if money's tied up for some reasons, then I would just urge the council to think very carefully about other ways that that money could be spent on social services, on extra capacity for domestic violence victims. Because what I'm hearing is that you want to spend $250,000 on lockers and showers, which is more than what you're investing in the mobile crisis unit. And that doesn't seem appropriate to me. I really hope that those of you who have gone into this already making up your mind about giving the police department so much more money will hear these voices tonight and make some changes to what you're giving to the police versus what you're giving to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional public comment, Ms. Jones, further discussion on the motion.
Sure, thank you. I have some comments I'd like to make, and I've been scribbling notes down, and I don't know that it'll all flow, but
First of all, I did want to comment that when the door behind me opens and you don't see anyone, it's because people in my house are crawling on the floor to get to the bathroom next to me to take a shower after they've gotten home from some sporting event. So that's what's going on. But I first of all did want to thank all of the people who have publicly commented. It has been a long budget season, and we've had many emails, which shows to me Missoulians care greatly about this community and have taken great interest in the budget this summer. I wanted to just point out that the budget has been more complicated this summer than any of the other 5 years I've been on council because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have very high unemployment. As a result, it was very important to not raise mills, but to hold steady. We have labor contracts in place with all city employees, which creates a baseline we need to meet every year if we honor those labor contracts. And I think that's a very important value. And then we've had calls for change this summer. Calls for change in how things are done, change that needs to happen in Missoula. There has been a loud, good discussion, I think, that we've had in this community. I will say it is pretty clear to me there is not consensus from what I see as a city councilor and all of the emails that have come through. There's a broad spectrum, but I think as our Council President Brian von Lossberg says repeatedly, we need to look at those requests and weigh them, analyze them. What tools do we have to address this? What will be constructive in the long run? Figure out from our perspective of having a depth of knowledge of city government, what's the best way forward? So, and also, as I've harped on many times, we have an archaic tax system and we're a chronically underfunded municipality. So there's a lot of sideboards here, a lot of different pressures. I appreciate all of the comment, and my takeaway from the last 2 months, 3 months of really sifting through all of this has been, I think our budget is in a good place right now, but we need to look at what we've done and where we need to go. What do we need to do in the future? And I think we have, for the last few years that I've been on council, we have been putting substantial monies into social programs, housing, homeless efforts, all sorts of things. And I look at it as we've really been laying the base. And then with the pandemic and with this broader discussion, it has been really good because it has pushed things forward and highlighted where we have great need, and it's created more of a mandate. And as a result of this discussion, I think we are doing more with this budget than we would have done otherwise. We are going further down the road in terms of funding some of these social programs. And I'm sure that many people think we're not doing enough, but my approach is I think we need to have strong incremental change, which is going to, we need to have how should I put it, a good foundation that we're going in new directions on, so that we will have solid results that will help us sift through the decisions of how to fund it in the long run, how to make it sustainable, how to make it impactful. And that doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in 1 year, but we've laid the base for the last few years. And because of that, we're able to do more this summer, which will lead to greater expansion next summer. So it may seem slow to people, but I think it's actually really constructive and lightning speed for municipal government in many ways. And there's been a lot of discussion about our police force. So our police force has a very low use of force percentage rate, which means it's a pretty good police force. But as with everyone, I'm sure there are areas where they can be improved and they can be better and serve the public better. And my goal with our police force is that we have a police force that is embraced by the community and serves our community. So in terms of that, we've got a new police chief that I think we need to give our support to, because we brought him in specifically for new ideas. We've got to give that some time to work and give him the support to get there. And I think there's been a lot of messages, but we also have done a lot of base work for addressing our social justice issues in this town. We have a master jail diversion plan that years went into creating that, and it was passed a few years ago by this council. From that, we have the CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, that looks specifically at how we can have a better justice outcome and not have high recidivism, but get people into the community working and have a better end product. All of this takes a lot of work and a lot of analysis, and that's what's going to create real change in the long run. I think it's really easy to put some labels on things and say we've done something. It's much harder to do the heavy lifting, create the depthful programs that will have impact in the long run. It's clear we have a lot of work to do. We have huge inequities in our nation at this point. Missoula is no different, but I think the programs that we're putting in place, the monies that we're reallocating this summer are going to go a long ways towards telling us how to do better in the long run. So the crisis intervention training, the mobile crisis team, the LEARN team, all of these are really constructive to try and give us the tools to make that change in the long run. So it may not be a perfect budget, but I think we've got things in the right place, and I'm voting in favor of it tonight. And next year, we'll take another step further, and we're going to keep at it, because I think this is the long game, and that's what Missoula needs to do. So thank you for your comments tonight, and I'm done.
Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Ms. Jones, for your comments. I really appreciated those and agreed with them as well. Wanted to echo those. I just want to state, too, that I truly appreciate the hard work of my fellow elected officials during this time. I mean, it hasn't been easy on any of us dealing with the pandemic and dealing with very difficult issues like criminal justice reform. And I think that my fellow council members have handled themselves professionally, adequately, and respectfully to the rest of the public. So very appreciative of that. And as a lot of you guys know, I've had a passion for criminal justice reform for a while, and I'll admit that I haven't done enough about it. I think that for me, these discussions have really kind of shined the light on some various ways that I can improve, and I know that my fellow council members will work with me on various things that do need to be addressed in the community over time. These can't be addressed overnight. They are systemic and various things that we need to focus on. One of the things that I think we need to focus on is diversifying our revenue streams a little bit. When we look at the massive amount of revenues and cash flows that come from fines, fees, and surcharges, we have to look at kind of how those are affecting different members of our community. First of all, fines kind of unjustly punish people that don't make as much money as somebody else. So an example is if we do a $100 cell phone ticket, I know that's not what it is, but just for simplicity purposes, a $100 cell phone ticket to somebody that makes $1,000 a month represents 10% of their monthly income. That same ticket for somebody for the same crime that makes $10,000 represents about 1% of their income, meaning that the punishment is unjustly applied to people that don't make as much money as some of the very wealthy. And this is not a Missoula issue. This is a national issue. This is a systemic issue. This goes back to what we can do as a community to maybe come out above and beyond what the rest of the country is doing. Any surcharge that we have, which we're still able to levy those on city municipal fines, $25 surcharge for somebody making minimum wage represents nearly 3 hours of their work, where somebody making $120,000 a year represents 26 minutes of their day, or a sixth as much of a punishment as it does for somebody that's making minimum wage. So we do allow $15 an hour to pay for a fine, to pay off a fine as opposed to cash, which is helpful for a lot of members of the community. But unfortunately, a lot of times those folks are single parents, they're folks on the poverty line, and when they have to go work to pay that ticket because they don't have cash in the bank, they still have to find somebody to take care of their kids. They take time off of work. There's some work that we can be done, and I'm hoping to get done in the next year surrounding that. There's just a few changes. It's going to take hard work, and I know that I need to step up and do more for that. So I'm just going to keep it brief. Although I am very grateful to the mayor for not raising property taxes this year, and not just lower the mill levies, but truly I think Missoulians are going to pay about the same that they did last year, and I think that's great. There's still many things in this budget that I cannot support that haven't been changed from prior years, everywhere from the fines and fees all the way to the bloated MRA budget. So I know people are asking why I'm not offering amendments and didn't offer amendments during this budget cycle, and the answer is simple. I've kind of been through that before. I knew that kind of the outcome was it's based on different philosophies. It's not I'm good and you guys are bad, as Jordan has eloquently stated. We just have different philosophies on the role of government, and I recognize that, and I think it was truly important for me and the rest of the council to hear from the public this year and not kind of squabble over battles that have already been hashed out and won. So I just, again, appreciate everybody's hard work. I'm not going to be able to support the budget. I think that the budget furtherly contributes to the gentrification of Missoula and unfortunately hurts smaller businesses and low-income folks and benefits big businesses and affluent. I know that's an opinion, but that's what I've seen this budget do time and time again, so I can't support it for those reasons, but appreciate the good work of everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Becerra.
Thank you. I just wanted to share what my thought process was, and I'll start with this. This is not a perfect budget, but it is a budget that reflects our awareness that we need to do better, that we need to invest differently, and that sometimes we need to act boldly. I think I speak for many when I say that our city budget should not be guided by this versus that, but rather that we need to always strive for both. I believe this budget, as amended, reflects the needs of our community. All city departments presented a budget where serving our community in an efficient, equitable, and vulnerable way, and humane way, is paramount. We solve centuries-long issues deeply rooted in systemic racial inequality and unbalanced funding one budget cycle? No. But we are cementing our commitment to addressing those issues. We're doing that by seed funding programs and investments that will help Missoulians thrive. We're funding a mobile crisis unit, a homeless navigation center. We're investing in our housing trust fund. We're investing in a partnership between Parks and Recreation, public schools, and other agencies to provide wraparound services in our community. We're allocating resources to address public safety and systemic racism. We're also doing that by not funding every request in the police budget and by funding new requests that will have a direct effect on the social and mental services delivered to our most vulnerable. So yes, I believe this budget gets us significantly closer to reflecting the values of our community. We're living in unprecedented times in this country and in the world. Political and public safety unrest, economic turmoil, all during a health pandemic. These are not the times to take sides and be divided. This is a time to put our heads and hearts together to find a path forward. This budget is not about winners or losers. This budget is about balance, fairness, respect for one another, and commitment to the future of this community. This budget isn't and should never be used as a political statement or as a divisive tool. This budget is and should always be about us, Missoulians, no matter what the color of our skin or the color of our uniform. I thank everyone who's participated in the budget process. Thank you for all your calls, your emails, your comments, for attending many, many hours of meetings. No matter where you stand on an issue, you participate because you care about this community, and I appreciate that. I also want to thank all my colleagues on City Council for your diligent and thoughtful work, for raising important issues, for proposing tactful amendments, and for much needed discussion. And always, much gratitude to our staff, to all of you for all you do every day to serve this beautiful place we call home. So let's get to work with this budget. Let's remain optimistic that these new investments in Missoula and in Missoulians will help us be a better, safer, and more equitable place. Thank you.
Mr. Hess.
Thanks. I guess this is my 7th budget season, and I always learn a lot, and I'm always grateful for the opportunity to participate in the budget process. This budget is marked by nuance and compassion and evidence-based decision-making. And I want to start by saying that it will not be passed by those with calcified hearts. I think that a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of effort has gone into this budget at the administration level, at the council level, by members of the public who have reviewed and provided comment on it. And we're better for it because of that, that process that we've gone through. I think that we can simultaneously recognize that there are structural problems with policing around the country. And also that we need to support our local police force with training and safe facilities and personal protective equipment. We can commit to improving our public safety framework, broadly speaking, proactively through programs like the Mobile Crisis Unit, while also recognizing that we are behind where we need to be in reacting to state and federal negligence. We have decades of poor funding of poor policy decisions and lack of funding at the state and federal level. And those problems are percolating through to the local level as never before. So we can recognize that all of those things are priorities, and we can pass a budget that is not an either or, that is not a budget of contrast, but a budget that is a both and budget. We can do these things. So there's been a lot said tonight and throughout the budget process, so I'll keep it brief. I do want to highlight that I think that this city is constantly innovating and spinning up new programs that are innovative. In some years, that's taken the flavor of bringing our water system into municipal ownership, or spinning up a compost program. In other years, it's taken other varieties. This year, I'm really proud of this Mobile Crisis Unit. The Mobile Crisis Unit is a $500,000 program. It is a big deal. It is a program that we are launching with partners throughout the community, and it will have meaningful impacts on public safety throughout our community. Just a few months ago, we purchased a motel for non-congregate sheltering during the pandemic. And my understanding is that this is the Sleepy Inn Motel is at or near capacity right now. These are impactful programs that matter, and they are going to be better for our community. Will be better for it. This budget has, gosh, I mean, between MRA and all of the other community and housing and community development programs, nearly $10 million in housing related programs, whether that's the Sleepy Inn purchase, which will be turned into attainable housing in the future, whether that's the purchase of the Scott Street parcel or the assistance on the Villaggio project, along with millions of dollars in other housing and community development programs. This budget contains funding for an equity audit. It contains funding for a seed funding for creation of a homelessness navigation center at the Trinity Center. It has a lot of good things in it. I appreciate the comments that we've received. I appreciate the involvement. When our house is on fire, it's our job to put that fire out. It is absolutely our job to put that fire out. It's also our job to hire and train the firefighters, to plan where to put the station, and to buy the right fire trucks. We can and we will do these things together, and we will move onward and upward. So I am proud to support the budget. I am grateful for the opportunity to participate in it, and I look forward to implementing it. Thank you.
Seeing no further council discussion, we will have a vote. I have two attendees with hands raised. And while we have closed the 3 attendees with hands raised, and while that time has passed in this virtual environment, I will err on the side of letting these folks talk. Shaylee Hall.
Hi, my name is Shaylee Hall, and I'll make it brief since we are allowing my comment. I came to the conclusion that most of you were not going to make changes to the budget based off of the conversations that you guys held and the evidence that was provided. As someone of color in a state who has dealt with a large amount of racism and suppression, oppression, and I've dealt with mental issues myself, it is disheartening to hear you guys thank each other and to just show so much pride in what you think you have done when you actually have done nothing. To sit and say you have listened and you have heard and you have moved and reallocated money to spaces that you feel reflects our community, when a community member like me is already speaking up and telling you that it is not, it is disheartening and it is sad, it is laughable. It is multiple things to think that you've done a job when you haven't. Some of you have had your position for a very long time. And like someone has said previously in commenting, what has taken you so long? What has taken you so long to make these changes that you know are happening, to make these changes that you should want to change, because people like me rely on you to do these things. Someone said you should worry about the seats that you are in, because you should. Because I look at you, Mrs. Jones, to make change. I look at you, President von Lossenberg, to make change. Mayor, you've had your seat now for 16 years. I would hope during that 16 years, you've been trying to make change. I don't care to defund the police because I'm aware that we need the police department. I'm aware we need those policemen and women out there protecting us, but I'm also aware of what the things that they actually do, the way that they actually treat people. And, you know, Randy, like previously stated before, I applaud him for being a good person, but that doesn't mean in his role, he acts like that person. So congratulations on passing a budget that is not reflective of your community, and congratulations on breaking the hearts of many of your community members who fight daily, who do the research, who do not use the internet to get their ideas or their information from. I've been working since June 5th, since Olkins Graham was attacked. I've been working since I was cornered by men with guns when the police didn't care to listen, to figure out how to make change for my community, because I care. I care about the people who have to grow up in this community, in this state, who look like me, who will be treated differently. So thank you so much for doing what job you think was great. And thank you, Julie Merritt, for actually listening to us, because out of everybody on that council, you are the only person who has taken the time, it seems, to actually listen to people like me and to read those emails, actually read them, because they come from very highly educated people, to listen and to take your seat and place your side aside and be a community member as well, instead of Julie Merritt, a council person. So thank you guys for passing a great budget that does not reflect any person in this community at all. Thank you.
Thank you. And London Mark. London.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. I have heard you council members talk and justify this budget. You have used a number of different terms, such as we're living in unprecedented times, as if we have not had economic crises or pandemics in this country before. I've heard you use phrases like these things take time and we're playing the long game and we need to do better. And all I hear is gradualism. And it sounds like I'm listening to a council meeting from the 1960s during the civil rights movement of people trying to make change and people asking for something better and absolutely not getting it. I hear you guys talking about how there's a lack of responsibility on the parts of the city government and what has happened in the past, but I'm not hearing anyone on this council take responsibility for any of the budgets or anything that has come up in the past. You've all mentioned how long you have been on the budget. You have all said how many budgets you have sat through, but but you have not really said anything about why you haven't proposed meaningful change in the past. One of you just said that if our house is on fire, it is our job to put it out. We can and we will. And what I hear is a bunch of band-aids for a bunch of programs that you guys are saying that we need, that we are implementing, and that are meaningful and that will create change. But I don't hear any actual change now. You say that you are representing this community, and what I hear is that you are representing certain people in this community. And looking at the people who are on this call, I can see exactly who is being represented. You have a responsibility to do, not in the future, not to set up for the future, but to do it now, right? Like there are Black and Indigenous people of color in this community who do not feel safe, who have watched police officers liaising and high-fiving with militia members, who have been tackling people on courthouse lawns, and the response has been laughable. Honestly, it's been laughable. And so I would urge you all to not think about this as something that takes time. Not think about this as, we're gonna fix this budget so we like it how it is this year so that we're comfortable with it. And then in the future, things will just continue to get better. That has been the story for centuries. And people of color have been hearing that story from people who look like you for centuries and for decades upon decades. And so if you refuse to listen, then the people of color in this community are going to continue to feel unsafe, continue to feel unheard, and these problems are going to continue to go on. I do the rest of my time.
Thank you, sir. Right, seeing no additional comment, we will move to a vote on the resolution. Ms. Rabine or Ms. Griffin, were there changes to that resolution as published?
Hi, there were changes to the resolution as published, and I just sent would you like me to pull up the most up-to-date one on the screen, or I did send them to you and Council President von Lossberg.
Yeah, let's put it on the screen so all council members and folks in the audience can see it. What changed, Ms. Griffin?
We updated there are a few changes in the expenses just as we were going through and reconciling, and a few changes to the revenues that did not get linked previously. There are no changes other than the city council changes made at last budget committee of the whole to the assessment levels and the tax levels.
Okay, so all those numbers reconcile?
Yes.
Great. Mr. von Lossberg, you accept those changes as a function of your motion?
I do.
Great. In that case, we've had a public hearing, public comment, council discussion, and we will have a roll call vote on the motion as amended and adjusted for recent changes. Right, what's on the screen is the next resolution council will consider.
Now we have the resolution that's fixing the annual appropriations. And so that resolution that is on your screen shows the entirety of the city's budget. And on that motion, we'll start this round with Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Basik.
No.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos.
No.
And that is, would any of you like to change your vote first of all? Hearing none, no changes. That's 9 yeses and 3 noes.
And the resolution is approved. Councilman Von Lossberg, if you'd be so kind as to make the following motion, that's the one levying taxes.
That's the last one, correct?
Correct.
Yep. I move we adopt a resolution levying taxes for municipal and administrative purposes for the fiscal year 2021.
That motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? And Ms. Griffin, if you wouldn't mind taking that down so I can see the participants. Thank you. And seeing no discussion, I also see no one in the audience with a hand raised. We will have a roll call vote. As a reminder, you're muted if you're calling the roll.
I'm not calling the roll. I'm trying to get, because the motions, you're taking motions out of the order they're listed in the agenda. I need to reorder them before I do the roll.
Gotcha.
I think I'm ready now. This round starts with Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
No.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
No.
And Harp.
Yes.
Wait,
You skip West.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes.
West votes yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that is, would any of you like to change your vote? That's 9 ayes, 3 noes.
And the resolution is approved. Mr. President, would you be so kind as to read all of the remaining, make all of the remaining motions? We'll have discussion on all of those motions and I'll take comment on all of those motions.
Yep, that's what I was planning to do. First is I move council adopt a resolution increasing fees by 3% relating to the review and processing of land use applications pursuant to city adopted regulations pertaining to zoning, subdivision, and floodplain services, business licensing, hazardous vegetation removal, engineering fees, and permits related to work and use of city public right-of-way, which are development services fees. Next one is I recommend, move council adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council Amendment Resolution 8194, increasing fees for administrative police department services, including fingerprinting services and provision of police reports to the public. Third is I move adoption of a resolution of the Missoula City Council increasing the wastewater industrial interceptor variance permit fee set forth in 13.07.410 Missoula Municipal Code and the waste hauler permit fee set forth in 13.17.210 Missoula Municipal Code by 3% beginning in January 1st, 2021. And the last is I move adoption of a resolution of the Missoula City Council increasing fire inspection, plan checking, pyrotechnic display, and special event fees, increasing fees by 3% effective January 1st, 2021, as shown in Exhibit E and F.
All of those motions are in order. Is there discussion on those motions? Seeing none, I see no hands raised among attendees with regard to the fee increases. No, I see Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to state that I am a no on this resolution, just because I do see most of these fees as an additional tax. If we look at the budget, only roughly 45 million of the 237 million actually comes from property taxes. So that means the majority of the money that we get from the residents actually comes from these fees. And due to the fact that we are in COVID, I think that if we could pause these fee increases as well, I think this would be a great benefit for the community overall. Not only for lower income folks, but overall the affordable housing crisis. Each one of these development fee hikes is passed on to the customer. And again, we've heard over the last few months that a small increase in the impact fees isn't a big deal. A small increase in the stormwater rates isn't a big deal. A small increase here, a small increase there, a bond levy here, a mill levy here. All of this stuff, it continues to add up. Just like that cell phone bill that I always like to talk about, where I went into AT&T. I'm still sour about it, is why I talk about it. But in any event, go into AT&T and they say it's going to be $50 a month, and then at the end of the day, you get your bill and it's actually $120 a month because each little line item on there adds up. You've got insurance, you got 5G, you've got Wi-Fi, hotspot. All this stuff continues to add up, and that's how these Missoula citizens feel. They feel like each one of these little increases by itself, it's not a big deal. Again, it's tiny. It's $4, $5, $6 a year here or there, but all of these little things are added on and on and on to the cost of the home, to the cost of living here in Missoula. So again, because I see these as tax increases and because I know that the citizens of Missoula are struggling and that the majority of our funds actually come from a lot of these fees, I'm a hard no on these. So I appreciate that, and I will conclude.
Ms. Anderson?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Dale, and we covered this in our budget committee that not everyone was present for last week, but I do think that these fees only incorporate a small amount. And I think that it's important that we're correct on the record tonight that the majority of our budget is enterprise fees, which is water. That's based on how much water you use, various things like that. Dale, could you please tell us how much these particular fees in these budget items actually make up of our budget?
I actually might defer that question to Lee off the, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but for example, in development fees, it's only a few $100,000 of the total development services budget that fees. But Lee, do you have better numbers up in front of you?
I have the total, which is approximately $53,000.
Oh, so $53,000 it represents the amount of the increase we're expecting from this fee increase.
Yes.
So 53,000 total is what these fees, if enacted, will additionally bring into the city.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Thank you. So these are basically user fees. In other words, people who are using this service are paying for them, which is historically a conservative position on taxes. I would have a very hard time telling my constituents that when someone goes in for fingerprinting services now for their business, property taxes will be spread out across everyone paying for that increase. Same with hazardous vegetation removal, business licensing, any increase, all of these costs go up every year, just like every business has costs that go up every year based on inflation and the cost of living. So if we don't do this, we're basically spreading it around on property taxes. And I would never be able to tell my constituents that I was in favor of going in that direction. So I will definitely be in support of this. It's a very small part of our budget, and it is frankly the right direction to go in as a user fee on these items.
Seeing no further discussion unless there is objection on the part of council members, I will have Ms. Rabine read the roll on all items and record the vote accordingly based on each motion. I got a sense that they're all going to go the same way. All right, seeing no objection, Ms. Rabine, we'll call the roll.
Okay, on all of the fee resolutions. Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
No.
Cheryl. Cheryl,
Sorry, my space bar wasn't working. Yes.
Vasika,
No.
Van Lossberg,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
No.
Harp.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? The vote on all of those resolutions was 9 ayes and 3 nays.
Thank you, and the resolutions are approved. Before we adjourn, I want to thank Lee and Dale and all of the staff who were engaged in bringing this budget to you, presenting it, answering your questions, and will ultimately be responsible for implementing the budget as well. Thank you all for your time and thoughtful deliberation. And as always, I thank you for your service. We will be adjourned.